is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Texas brings pressure. Duggan backpedals, lofts to the end zone, wide open. Johnson, touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Play fake, McCarthy. Survey, in trouble, just fires it up, and it's caught on the sideline by Coral.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
End around to Neighbors. Has a crease. Malik Neighbors down the sideline. Stays in bounds with a cutback. House call. Another LSU touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Pokey Wilson in motion. It's Benson. Benson, his second touchdown tonight. 15 yards for Trey Benson.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome in. This is the last time you'll see me for the next couple weeks. Smoak, you'll be sitting here without me, so bringing the heat for one more day before I'm off to change my whole life. So, but lots to get to in the world of college football. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, Garrett Ross, and Jack McKenzie, Grant Bronstein, and Emery Winter here as well. And Craig, I guess the big scuttlebutt today was Washington State's meeting with their board and the regents, and athletics director Pat Chun was up there, and President Kirk Schultz. They were all going through budgets and different things, and there were a couple of things that came out of that, and this is from Kip Hill, who was covering the meeting. He says that a new Pac-12 TV revenue deal is probably coming in the next 2 weeks, adding some certainty to the numbers they're presenting today to the regents as far as what they are. Washington State is dealing with a very large athletics department budget shortfall, which the meeting, if you watched it, was not a great meeting for Washington State individually because they had to go through some very hard facts about where their money is, but it does start to lean more towards the fact that the Pac-12 feels like maybe they're hitting the finish line. Now, I know we've heard this before, but maybe not in such fast succession like this.
I don't know. I feel like we kind of have, actually. Yeah. I mean, we've heard, it was just, 5-6 weeks ago when there was Kirk Schultz out there, there was Robbins, they were all talking, there was a deal right around the corner, and I don't know, 5-6 weeks later, here we are, we're still talking about the same stuff, right? And not a single thing's changed. So I don't know if this means anything, but it certainly does, seem to signal that they're putting out there that it's right around the corner, and I know they've said that before, which is why we're all a little bit hesitant, but the makings are there. The ingredients are there for there to be finally a finished recipe, finally a finished meal for the Pac-12 in terms of their media deal. So, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of people digesting and parsing his words and, comparing numbers and doing all these different things. We've kind of been here before, but yeah, I mean, it does have a little bit of a feel like maybe this is actually for real for once, but, fool me once, fool me twice, that whole thing right there. For example, I saw, we can get into it, but I saw somebody put together a timeline of every time they've apparently been close, and it's really funny to go through like the 12 times that over the last few months there's been a comment about this TV deal, and, people on the Pac-12 side of the fence get tired of hearing about it and all that, but if you go through this list, you understand why. You understand why it kept getting talked about, because they kept bringing it up and commenting on it and then saying, oh, well, it's right around the corner, and then time would go by, and so we can go back to December of this past year. That's 6 months in now, and go through like twice a month or even multiple times in the month of March where there was a report. And so it's funny if you want to look back at that at some point. But yeah, this does seem to be, a situation where maybe this really is the time. And certainly they've had probably more time than given credit for. I think that we dialed up the heat on them when they didn't have to, it doesn't have to be done by June 1st, it doesn't have to be done by a certain date, but it does have to be done at a certain point, and I think they're kind of bumping up against that now, and just everybody involved would like to get it done. Everybody on the outside looking in, observing, would like to get it done so they could understand what they can do next, and it's been a long trail, but maybe, just maybe we're here, but I certainly understand why everybody's like, yeah, I'm not going to buy that until I actually see something.
Well, and look, they were... The reason that it was already turned up is they were a year out, and then the Big 10 and Big 12, who were multiple years out, got theirs done. And because of the Big 10 was always going to do that, and then Brett Yormark and the Big 12 decided, well, there's not a line. We don't have to wait in line. This isn't Disney World. We can go do what we want to do if they're willing to talk to us. So they went out and did that, and then we've gotten to the point where the Pac-12 is the one who kind of keeps setting the deadline. And doing that. And had they said from the beginning, look, we don't know when it's going to get done, but,
Yeah, I think, if you take off, your league cap and you look at this impartially, yes, they've sort of done it to themselves, and then other times, when we've been screaming, why is no one saying anything? And then somebody says something, it's why'd you say that? That was stupid. I think that's happened a couple of times, has it not? Where... you why is it so quiet? It's too quiet. Quiet means this. And then somebody like Schultz speaks up and they're like, what a moron. Why is he talking? Clearly that's never going to happen. So I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of a thing.
And I think that's why we haven't heard from George Kliavkoff, because the last time he did talk, he got a little bit oh, we're not going shopping there. Hey, right. I'm going to make jokes. And then the next time he was supposed to talk, all these other things had happened. And he was like, man, I don't he was probably very smartly going, I don't want to look like I'm going to be wrong or silly or speak out of turn. But because I don't know, I think a lot of people are trying to, with this Washington Washington State meeting they had today, trying to put a lot of realignment stuff on it that may or may not be there. And I think if you look at it, it just was a really tough day for the Washington State Athletic Department to have to go through why they have budget shortfalls, why things are changing, and going through and having those meetings, because if you are the athletics director and the president and you have to sit across the board and look at them and they say, hey, why are we $5.5 million down here? What's happened that we're in this much debt, and how do we go about fixing it? Garrett, put up the next tweet that you have from Kip Hill. And we can't build a budget that have no basis in reality, and that's what got us here. So they don't want to. I guess they've been doing that, and they're saying that they're trying to get the budget down. Of course, they won't. They have the idea, I guess, of what the media deal is going to be. But again, that's why I think that just outside of realignment alone, these schools really want to get this done, because now you've got one of them who would be on the outside looking in if the conference did collapse, is trying to figure out what their future is. Yeah,
and I think, too, got to be careful where you pull things and what the context is of it, because Kip Hill followed up on that very quote right there, and that's just a quote. That has no basis, that has no setup or nothing. It's just a quote. So, yeah, you just throw a quote out there, and anybody can take it a million different ways. But Kip followed up and said this one probably deserved a bit more context this summer season on it. Schultz was talking about budgeting beyond next year for 25, 26, and 27 when he made this statement. So that's what he was referring to. But I saw that, and what was it taken as? It was taken as the Pac-12 doesn't have a deal. They don't have numbers to base reality, or numbers to base anything on, and I can understand why, especially when you just see it as a quote originally, and that's kind of where everybody's brain is. But he did follow up with a little bit more context on what exactly was being talked about here. Look, when they get into budgetary talks and where the money's going and all that stuff, that's not necessarily my lane, and I don't know how much that has to do with the realignment factor and all that. I know that the TV deal obviously matters, in the grand scheme of things. But, some of that, you could read into not just that quote, but I guess things that he was talking about today and take that a certain kind of way. But, I took it like you did actually of, just kind of a messy situation at Washington State that they're having to work their way through. That's not great timing and not something you ever really want to do. I saw, a little bit of discussion about the money being spent in athletics, and they had some talk about that. So Pat Chun and company trying to, Kirk Schultz, figure out the budget and get their money right, and not something you'd want to be doing. And then, also to have a little bit of the future money that you're expecting, not quite settled just yet, I'm sure is not helping matters. But, that didn't stop the feeling that there is still something coming up, and that didn't stop folks from still, claiming that there's going to be something here in the next couple of weeks. So, for their sake, you hope that's true. But, yeah, Washington State certainly, rattled the cages a little bit and kicked up a little dust today for all the folks that have been paying pretty close attention.
Yeah, let's go through some of the rest of these tweets here, Garrett. Chun says the advent of NIL has made it difficult to go to donors to ask them to support the university. The whole dynamic has shifted. And this is not a Washington State. This is an issue that every school is going to have.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know where people will want to, because NIL is a hot button issue, and alums are going to have to support it, but there might be some who may be a little more old-fashioned about it and would never do such a thing, so their money can still go to facilities. But if you want to keep pace, you're going to have to, and that's going to mean athletic directors and presidents telling the donors you saw Nick Saban essentially doing it. He's kind of repeatedly doing it. Every time he brings up another school that's spending a bunch on their players, what it is a reminder to his donors that, we got to make sure that we keep getting money in the pockets of players, or you're going to fall behind.
In a crap economy right now, where, the money's not flowing as freely as it was, at different points in time when we were, when engines were revving economically. That's certainly not the case right now. So I can't imagine that that's really, helped boosters out. All, the little bit of extra that you had that you gave typically is not as much as maybe it once was. For some others, probably as much, maybe it's more. But, just in general, I think everybody's probably got a little thinner wallets at this point in time, and maybe not enough. And especially not enough with, maybe it's one thing if you're being asked to contribute that $1 million you contribute every year, that $200K or that $2,000, whatever it is that you put into the pot there. But now you're basically saying you spend 20 a year giving back. Well, we need 40 now. We need double from everybody, because now we've got a second pot that we have to fill up for just the NIL piece of it. And, yeah, that's problematic for a lot of the schools, for the majority of schools, I would imagine. It's one thing if you're at some of the schools that are, just seemingly bulletproof when it comes to finding funds, like, an A&M, a Texas, around these parts, especially those two. But, others around the country who have, big fan bases, big enrollment, big history, Michigan or Ohio State, the usual suspects. I'm sure they're struggling to a certain extent, just because it's not like it's an ATM where it's always open all the time, even though for some of them, especially those two Texas schools I mentioned, it certainly seems like that. So they're unique in that way. But for everybody else, they were scratching and clawing a lot of the time to begin with, and then maybe in the case of a Baylor, who's a much smaller school, a private school, they got big windfalls, but it was when they'd go win the Big 12 and they'd go win a national championship in basketball. There were reasons. It wasn't just hey, we need our annual donations. You had that, but you really got it, the party rolling when you were winning big. And so, you got into those pockets. That's great. But to have to do that over and over and over again, when you don't have 100,000 living alumni and, that kind of thing backing you, that's still difficult. Now you throw in a second pot that you're asking all those same people to contribute to. And, yeah, for a majority of schools out there, it's not fun right now to try to figure out where all this is headed and how it's all going to continue to work for you.
Yeah, and when you've got – Texas and Texas A&M are different because they have they're kind of – to use a very recent term, they're a little bit like Saudi Arabia in that they get oil money.
Right, yeah.
So as long as the Permian Basin and wherever else, the oil that A&M and Texas has keeps going, then they're going to be fine. So they don't when they go to donors, they can ask them legitimately for what they want, which is as opposed to, it could be this or this. They can be look, we've got A, B, and C covered. We're down to D now where we need you. This is what we need you for. That's why A&M and Texas's, NIL arms popped up so fast, mostly because they were kind of probably laying dormant from the SWC era anyway, and they already had a structure in place for what they did, or, to whatever extent people were doing those things under the table, they were already kind of there and ready to go, because those schools like that, Ohio State has money. Like they can go to their alums and say, yes, you can go to the NIL, not worry about that we're not going to get the new track, because they're going to be able to build the new track later on. But Washington State doesn't have that same benefit. They're not sitting on a big bunch of oil.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, is that today they were talking about the fact that they don't have the money to exactly do that, or at least that NIL is handcuffing them to a certain extent. There's also concerns about athletic spending and what that looks like moving forward, so they're going to keep a much closer eye, I would imagine, up in Pullman on exactly how that's all operating. That was very clear from some of the talk today as well, as needing to improve on their planning for spending in athletics, and obviously knowing a TV deal would help that immensely. And within all that, that's when Schultz commented that, by the end of the month, basically, is kind of what he indicated was when we could hear something about, that media deal when he was being questioned. So, that's something that Washington State's dealing with, but a lot of others are, as far as that NIL piece to it. But I know they talked about a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, Cougar Tracks, I don't think the donors are going to be too excited to pay that $70 million back I guess that's the Comcast deal, that all the schools have to come up with part of. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal. But, if you're Washington State and you have an $11.5 million deficit after you came off a $2.2 million surplus, that's why this meeting was held today.
Well, and you were counting on a few million that apparently is not even really yours, and you have to give it back. And did you spend it already? How does all that work? And, that's not great, and that can mess up your books, I would imagine, pretty quick too.
Yeah. Daniel Acton says, Paul Catalina, your alma mater has nearly unlimited money too. That is actually not true. The one across the state does, and doesn't know how to spend it. That's where they've gotten in their problems. That's the other thing, though, is there are schools like Florida, they've fallen behind in facilities, and they have tons of money available to them, but they just don't know they haven't spent it the right way. They haven't been aggressive on getting those things done. Look, Baylor, and FSU's doing better, but yeah, I think that, when you look at schools, some people just aren't great at spending it. Baylor right now has been able to get all the facilities done and all that, but look, the clock is ticking on them, because right now, I think men's basketball has a pretty decent NIL thing going, and they do get stars, but football doesn't. So if they want to, again, keep pace, and I don't know who has the best NIL of the new Big 12. Who's going to have that going the best?
Yeah,
Texas Tech probably now.
Well, they're giving every player even 20 or how many walk-ons. It's 10 walk-ons or 15 or something. I think
it was 15.
15 walk-ons plus all the 83 are all getting whatever tens of thousands of dollars now at this point across the team. So I think it was I don't know for sure, because I know things have changed, and I don't keep a daily update on their NIL, but let's assume it's on average it was $25K for every player under scholarship, and then 15 walk-ons. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has something set up like that at the moment. So yeah, I would probably guess them if you were guessing on who had that.
Yeah. So who else is going to do that? Kansas basketball is always going to.
Right.
They had it before there was NIL. So let's. I'm going to get in trouble for that, but it's true. It's why the whole Adidas thing went down. They have all those things in place. So yeah, it's interesting, but I don't know. I don't know if this was, and we led off the show with it because we had to, but I'm not sure this was gigantic, earth-shattering realignment possible news.
Well, there's more to it than the NIL, though.
Exactly.
We spent the last several minutes talking NIL, and for rightfully so, because that's part of the budget issue. But we can go on to say that he also went on to said flat media revenue income based on what he's seen. He got the authority. There was one more action item per Kip Hill on the agenda, which is grant Schultz authority to approve a future media rights deal without the need for a regents meeting. Other Pac-12 schools already do this, the administration said. And then he followed up saying, okay, that wasn't him, but that was the other part of this. And, I guess that's I thought that was him that was following up with that. But, yeah, I guess the assumption was that, when asked was what is the figure going to come in at, and reportedly he said, flat which would put them in line with what they've been making. And I know there's differences in the numbers between, like, this is TV money and this is all the money put together, and then I get lost in comparisons of all of that. But, keeping them flat, I think, would keep it somewhat reasonably in line with whatever figure you're pointing to with the Big 12. And if I'm wrong on that, I'm not following it as closely as a lot of people as far as, like, the financials and all of that. So please correct me nicely if I'm wrong there, but I feel like it's within a reasonable amount of millions that we're not talking about whatever figure you're talking about, whether it's the all sports, including basketball tourney money, or whether it's just the pure TV money. I didn't get into the weeds on that, but either way, it would appear that if he was talking about just the TV money, that it's going to be close enough that I don't see it being a reason as to why you would jump ship, based on what I saw. It wasn't like $15 million and then the Big 12's making 31 or whatever, because that would be like, you'd go, whoa, that's crazy, but that doesn't appear to be the case. And look, there's some people that have claimed that, no matter what the number was, it wasn't going to matter. I don't fully believe that, because never say never. If somebody came back and said 15 million and all of a sudden that would be noticeable enough that you'd have to go, wait a second. The entire conference would go, whoa, wait a minute here. Now, that would mean dropping significantly, and that doesn't appear to be the case. So I do feel like there is a threshold that would have to concern everyone, but it doesn't appear that that's something you're going to have to worry about with this if, in fact, it remains close to what it was. But again, there's folks out there with all sorts of numbers and all of that have been following this, like Brian Etheridge on our site and Sam Bradshaw and folks like that. And so, they're probably better served to do the direct comparisons. But I didn't see anything, surely, and that's why I asked the chat too, what's up, chat, to correct me if I'm wrong. But I didn't see anything that was, like, noticeably a major gap as expected. But, I haven't also been all over it all day long. So that's why I'm asking for a little help too.
Yeah, and look, the flat budget, you could extrapolate that to me like, oh, no, they didn't get, and then.
No, flat income.
Or flat income.
Media income.
Flat media income. Okay, well, that probably doesn't necessarily get them to third, or maybe it keeps them tied, or, maybe technically, I don't know. And again, I don't know what off the top of my head, like you said, what the numbers were. But, so yeah, I mean, they got the same deal they had. They were fine operating on it. Their problem is that they've got, deficits, and each individual school is different. Some might be operating at a better clip than the others. And obviously, look, things weren't going great for USC financially. They thought that's why they left and took the Big Ten deal. But it doesn't mean that everybody's like that. So I don't know if this is. I don't think this is anything that should make you go, oh, it's happening.
No, and, maybe that's not what some people want to hear, but, I mean, we're just going to be like we've been this entire time and be honest about it. I mean, we're not going to sit there and, no, Big 12 wins this. We're not keeping score on the rounds and anything like that. I didn't see anything that made me go, uh-oh, Titanic's sinking. I saw Washington acknowledge that they have some budgetary issues that they got to figure out moving forward, in particular when it comes to athletics. I saw them go ahead and basically pre-approve him being able to, or it was indicated that he'll be able to, move forward with the deal, whatever that may look like, that it's going to be potentially flat compared to this last one. So whatever range exactly he's talking about there, whether that was, I guess, just the pure media part of it, will stay about the same based on what he said. And, I think that kind of covers it all. We got to do better on the budget. NIL's a problem is another part of this, but that's like probably nearly every board meeting other than the Aggies, the Longhorns, schools like that, as I mentioned. Moving forward with this deal that, he also, indicated is around the corner within a couple of weeks. So there's that again. If you want to believe that or not, I understand. And I think those were kind of the highlights. I think we kind of touched on the highlights for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a break right here. The Big Ten schedule was released yesterday. We didn't really get to dive too deep into it, and I do want to go through a couple of the schools in the 4 o'clock hour, Craig, after we get to our guests. But Scott Dochterman of The Athletic joined us last week to talk about his column on the SEC schedule. He wrote another one on the Big Ten schedule, and he mostly covers the Big Ten beat. So I want to have him back on because, he really kind of points out the high points of this. And I agreed with his column that, look, this was really bold decision to do. It's a very complex scheduling plan. It's not easy at all, but it's going to be what the best one is going forward. And it's pretty smart because they've got, 3 or 4 TV media partners or I guess 3 moving forward that they have to keep happy. And, the more games, the better, and the way that it'll keep consistently, I think will be better for the Big Ten in the long run. We'll talk to Scott Docterman of The Athletic next. This is 365 Sports.
I love sharing stories of our sponsors and their stories about customers. Dr. Rob Maxey, a partner with Ideal MRI in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco, sent me a couple of different stories this year that really stood out. There was a woman who called saying that her insurance was making her go to the hospital for an MRI, and it would cost her $1,600 for the knee MRI with insurance. She called Ideal MRI and was distraught. When they told her the price, she was elated and relieved. She got her exam, the scan, the results for her doctors. So the doctors had it available for the appointment. Her exam was interpreted by a fellowship-trained world-class muscular skeletal radiologist. Her doctor has access to the images online immediately, just like the doctors I have received images online when I've had an MRI with Ideal MRI. And $497 saved the patient $1,100. That's just one of the stories. There was also a patient that needed an MRI, but her deductible had a $6,000 hit on it. The hospital said they would charge $2,000. She went to MRI, Ideal MRI, cost her $497, saved her nearly $1,500. The insurance is also something they will work on for you. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas Marketplace in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
It's Ram season at Allen Samuels in Waco, and the deals couldn't be any hotter. Shop the greatest selection of new inventory in Central Texas and save big on Ram trucks. Now offering 10% off MSRP on a new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, or get 2.9% for 72 months. The choice is yours. Plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders. Allen Samuels in Waco is the place to shop Ram trucks. Visit today or browse online at allensamuelsdcj.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. He was on with us last week. We had to get him on again. I mean, mostly because he's the schedule wizard and has, done such deep dives on the SEC scheduling model that they approved, and we talked to him about that last week. Now he's on his regular beat, which is covering the Big Ten. And Scott, you really like what the Big Ten has done with their schedule. It is complicated, and it's not going to be easy for most people to follow early on, I would think. But even still, it's innovative, it's different, and it ensures that you're going to see the games that you really want to see if you're a fan of that conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think that it would have been easy for the Big Ten to just say, you know what, we're going to go 3-6-6. Everybody gets 3 rivals, and we'll play them, over a 4-year period, and then you cycle in the other 12. Or well, not everybody has 3 rivals, so let's just everybody get 2 and do it that way. Instead, they decided to go to the flex because the Big Ten has been around since 1896. There's a lot of rivalries that are really important to certain institutions. And yet, for others, there's some where you just kind of shrug and you play the team. So I think in this case, they hit the ones that were the most important, and then they allowed everything else to kind of flow around it. And by doing it in a 2-year window instead of 4, which was the original plan, then I think it enables them to pivot, to change, to shift things around, and also capitalize on, let's say Illinois, for instance, becomes a really good program under Brett Bielema, or Nebraska returns to whatever Nebraska was supposed to be, but maybe USC disappoints or whatever. Then that enables them to kind of say, okay, well, let's make sure that we have Nebraska playing USC in a 2-year window, or Michigan, or somebody that they can capitalize on it from a TV perspective, rather than be set in this this is who they're playing and that's it. So I think that the Big Ten threaded the needle perfectly, as good as any league I've seen put these schedules together.
Scott, this was something that was obviously very well thought out. I know they mentioned how long it took to do it. It was also kind of confusing too, in some cases. Did you have to kind of unpack and figure some things out as far as like with the flexes? Like, not everybody had the same numbers of permanent rivals, and there were little tweaks and differences there, right, that they had to end up dealing with in the end. So it wasn't exactly the same exact set opponents, set rivals, all that for every single team, correct?
Yeah, and that's what made it complicated. There were 11 rivalries that were deemed permanent, and Iowa has 3, Penn State has 0, and other ones, Michigan has 2, Michigan State and Ohio State. So they all kind of flow differently from that. But then what they decided to do was kind of to supplement it, so everybody had 3 for a 2-year period. Then they called them 2 plays. So a team like Wisconsin plays USC both years, and so every team had the equivalent of 3 2 plays. You have the permanent ones and the ones that just kind of cycle off after 2 years and go to a single play on a 2-year period. So it is a little bit complicated. It takes some time to really study it. I certainly spent a lot of time making sure I had all the right buttons, but overall it played out really well, because not only were they able, it took them 171 versions before they found the one they liked the best, first of all. But also, when you look at the competitive level, I think we can all agree that there are 4 teams that are probably the highest profile: Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and USC. You look at how they play amongst each other in the next 2-year period. They each play each other twice, not 3 times in a given year. And then there's the next tier, which I would say is, pretty high profile in its own right. They're good football programs, competitive at a high level, and generally year in and year out. That's Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Nebraska fits into that because football is clearly important in Nebraska. And then, so there's a combination of those made powers playing at least two of them every single year, if not three. And likewise with that second deck, they're playing everybody as well in that 2 to 3 window. So I think that you've got 4 to 5 competitive teams against possible ranked opponents, and then you filter in the rest. I mean, so they really thought it all through competitively, travel-wise, rivalry, history, and then left themselves wiggle room in the future for, in case, let's say Kirk Ferentz leaves in Iowa Falls, but Illinois is really good, then maybe they figure out a way to play some of, to accommodate that on the schedule.
Scott, one of the things they appeared to have done as well is kind of grasp the fact that, look, they're, nearly a coast-to-coast conference now with the additions of USC and UCLA. And in going back, you mentioned Penn State has no rivals. Well, they have, other new members, like, Rutgers and Maryland are also new members, and to just try to say, like, let's make Penn State, Rutgers, and Maryland, since they were the last three to join before USC and UCLA, those are the rivals for each other, right? And so let's just make that happen, even though those schools don't really care about that all that much. Instead of trying to make it happen, like, I'll just use the example of A&M and South Carolina that the SEC's been trying to push for all these years. Like, they're not trying to make things happen that are just not going to be rivals no matter how many times you play. Over 30 years that, those teams could play, and Penn State would never consider Rutgers a rival.
Oh, exactly. I mean, they have to be organic, and that's, what you said was exactly true about A&M, that now in the new look SEC, if they decide to go, if they end up voting for a 9-game schedule with 3 rivalries, then, Arkansas makes sense. Certainly Texas does. LSU has become a good rivalry. But South Carolina or somebody on the other side doesn't make sense. And like with Penn State, they're always going to look down on Maryland and Rutgers. They're regional teams. They like to play them, but that's not a rivalry to them. And then, Michigan State and Penn State's been a nice series. I think we could all agree it's been a really good, competitive, fun series. But it's not one that either one school says we absolutely have to play it. And then Ohio State, Penn State does make some sense, except for the competitive balance, which would mean that Ohio State's 2 protected rivals would be Michigan and Penn State. And then, by the way, some years they're going to play USC, and then you throw on a Wisconsin and Iowa. And it's like, well, even the Blue Bloods kind of deserve some even treatment here. And so I think that's why, and Penn State loves to live up the moniker of being unrivaled. And now it's really true. And then they cycle through everybody else on a, probably a more consistent level than Iowa does, which will play everybody basically every other year, but they won't have any kind of, they won't play anybody else other than Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska, twice over a 2-year period.
How bizarre is it to see those LA schools listed, and how much do you think that multiplies the big matchups when you just kind of, initially look at this schedule?
Oh, it's fantastic when you look at it that way, but it's kind of this, wow, this is really happening moment.
Yeah.
And I think you look at, Michigan and USC play the first year, Ohio State and USC play the second, Penn State and USC play both years. I think the challenge is going to be, and this is what Kerry Kenny, the COO of the Big Ten, told me yesterday, was the next step is actually more difficult, which is scheduling, because they're looking at, the California schools. They're not going to say, oh, you're going to go to Penn State one week and then Rutgers the next. I mean, they're just not going to do that. They want to try to help them out that way. But then likewise, none of the other schools are going to California more than once a year. So they've got to be real careful in how they do that. Now, they're lucky that the 2024 season is a 14-week season, so they can kind of pencil in a few other matchups. Maybe besides, can you imagine kicking off the whole year with USC and Penn State? That would be something, that's smart to do and start the season off strong. So they're going to have to, be creative in their matchups and ensure that, again, that USC and UCLA aren't flying all over the country multiple weeks in a row, because then that can, cause a lot of detriments to those programs.
Scott, how much did the SEC's bumbling of this play into, I know it's only a week separated, so they pretty much had their decision in mind, but maybe reinforced that they knew that they were doing the right thing?
Yeah, I think you're right. They reinforced it to them. They saw what the SEC did, and they were actually very surprised. they thought, how can you really get away with this? Playing 8 games, not playing 9, you're having a 16-team league, you're adding these 2 huge brands, and yet you're not really capitalizing on it. And for the Big Ten, they're emphatic. They said we were not wavering off 9. We were staying at 9 no matter what. But then to make sure that those teams get to play each other at least once over a 2-year period, it's like we're in the same conference. Let's play like it. Let's be in the same conference. And I think, I know the SEC and Big Ten are so averse to each other in certain areas that I can't imagine the SEC saying, yeah, we want to do that. But I think they kind of should, which is, maybe it's 9 games for them, and maybe it's, hey, A&M, you get to play Texas and LSU, and that's it, as far as your projected rivals. Or, UT, maybe you're playing Oklahoma, A&M, and Arkansas, or maybe it's just 2 of them. Or, Tennessee has a million rivals, and you couldn't tell me which one's the most important. So I think in some ways, so there could be like Iowa in that regard. So that would make the most sense. But I can also see the SEC saying there's no way we're doing what the Big Ten's doing. I don't care how good it looks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially the way that they made such noise about it last week and weren't ready to even just add that other game on a much simpler scheduling format. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think everybody should do this. I think that if you're going to have – and again, not everybody can do it. The Big 12 will have 12 teams, and the Pac 12 will have 10 and all of that, so they won't be able to do it. But, I mean, if you were going to go to 16 teams or more, the ACC, they have a different scheduling model than this, but I just think that they should stick with this because you're going to get more games that you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the Big 12, for instance, and you now have, different Texas schools. I mean, TCU and Baylor absolutely should play every year, no matter what. I don't know how to test the temperature on how does Tech figure into that. Houston, you guys know that way better than I do. Oklahoma State, but like up in the northern part with Iowa State, I think they would be happy if they played Kansas and Kansas State every year. And then the rest of it just filtered in. And kind of like here at Iowa, Minnesota and Wisconsin are historic rivals. I mean, teams that they've played for 130 years that have just immense history. They didn't want to give that up. And then there's real equity in the Black Friday series between Iowa and Nebraska. And once Nebraska gets off the deck, and if Iowa maintains at least being competitive, that's going to be a real important series for the Big Ten. So that's why it was complicated with Iowa having 3. But I think that they all played it well. They just said, you know what, these are the games that matter, that everybody wants to see. There's reasons for this. Let's keep playing those. But then there's no difference between, Purdue playing Michigan State or Ohio State versus going west. That arbitrary line, that artificial line is now gone. And I think that's what other leagues should do. Is the ACC is a hodgepodge of a bunch of teams that really don't, some have commonality, some don't. They should just look at, we want to play you. We don't really care about you. Why are we going to have to play you every year when we really have no reason to?
Yep. Scott Docterman of The Athletic. Scott, thanks so much. 2 weeks in a row. Really appreciate it, buddy.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah. One of the best columnists they've got going there at The Athletic, and they've got a lot of great ones. So, yeah, I just think if you can get to something like this where, you're not playing, a team that the fans don't care about 4 times in a row, you play them maybe twice and then move on. I'm for that, Craig, for everybody around the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all for good schedules and good opponents. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like it's setting up well for them to have just that. And, a lot to unpack when you initially read that about the flex and the permanent rivals, and Iowa somehow has 3 and then others have 0. Like, that's all kind of hard to figure out, or, takes a second to figure out. So that was what I spent time doing, reading on that. But, yeah, it's cool to see. I mean, it's just a schedule in the end, but it does obviously have huge ramifications once it rolls around, not on this year, but, moving forward, we now have a clearer picture on what exactly that USC and UCLA entrance is going to look like and the big matchups that you can expect with that. And, soon enough, I'm sure we'll, have a time where the SEC will finally be ready to unveil what they want to do ultimately in the long run. But, yeah, I think it's like Smokey said yesterday, just copy and paste what you did with the Big Ten. Like, it's not that hard. And I know it's probably not that simple either, but could you just do that? Like, really? Could you? Could you probably do that? And I think, as he said, there's probably differences with the number of rivals Tennessee has versus South Carolina, like you said, for example. And I know in the SEC's case, too, a lot of them have their big permanent, or some semi-permanent yearly out-of-conference rival. So you want to maintain that as well. But, SEC I feel like should come first. But, history has its place as well when we feel like it needs to. And then when it doesn't, then we throw it to the wayside. But, those historical rivalries are also of some importance to that SEC schedule. So, the Big Ten figured it out. The SEC will be able to as well. But, I like kind of unpacking it and seeing what all that's going to look like and what to expect.
Yep, absolutely. When we come back, Grayson Grundhoefer, Sikkim365.com. This is 365 Sports.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with Grayson Grundhoefer of Sikkim365.com. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Grayson Grundhoefer, who's about to kick off what I would assume is a very busy weekend. This is a big recruiting weekend for Baylor, isn't it, Grayson?
It definitely is, and they got 3 straight big recruiting weekends coming up, as well as camp. They have the Baylor camp on Saturday each of the next 3 weekends as well. So, yeah, you're exactly right. It's definitely a busy time. Last year, Baylor got 11 commits in the month of June. So we'll see if they're able to come close to that. I'm not sure if they'll get to 11, but it definitely seems like they're starting to pick up a little bit of momentum on the trail as we reach these official visit weekends.
So as best you can, without obviously just dishing all the premium info, why does it feel like that?
Why does it feel like they're going to land some recruits?
Why does it feel like they're picking up some serious momentum as they enter these camps?
Yeah, so I think the big part of that is, you go out, you land a guy like Mason Dawson, who I do feel like is a huge addition to this class, just with his speed, the fact that he's a Baylor legacy, the fact that they offered him early, and he's going to play safety, which is a position they very much need to address in this class. But it just seems like going into these official visit weekends, they've really narrowed down the guys that they're bringing on visits. So there's only 6 or 7 this weekend. The next weekend, there'll be like 6 or 7. And then the next weekend, it's 6 or 7. Whereas if you go back and look at last year, it was basically 10, and then I think one of them had 11 or 12. So it just seems like they've been, going out, identifying the guys that they really, really want in their recruiting class. And now it's just about landing them on their visits. And as we saw during the most recent transfer cycle, the 3 guys that they had take official visits from the transfer portal all committed in the next week after their visit. So if that trend continues, then I think Baylor's going to be in a good position after the month of June. And I know there's a lot of doom and gloom. I've seen that all over the boards about, they're recruiting and everything like that. But I do think that there are some positives here as Baylor's starting to turn the corner a little bit with this recruiting class. We're starting to figure out who the main priorities are, and they're really starting to focus and narrow their sights on their key targets. And then, of course, later on, because of the lack of a restriction for official visits, they'll probably be able to have another official visit in July where they can go out and maybe find some more specific targets after this first wave.
Grayson, if you had to pick one player you'd like to see them come out of this weekend or these next 3 weeks with, who would it be?
Well, yeah, let's start with this weekend so that y'all can ask that each week.
Yeah,
I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Good programming idea.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So I think, and it helps me out instead of having to go through every weekend. But I will say for this weekend in particular, they have 6 really good prospects. 2 are commits with Nate Bennett and Mason Dawson. So obviously they're good there, but I think that this is a weekend where I'd like to see them land kind of one of those players at a premium position, which that spot I'm going with is Josh Lair. He's out of Fort Bend Marshall. He is going to take a lot of work for Baylor to land him. He's got basically, I would say his top 5 or 6 are pretty much LSU, Texas A&M, Washington, Texas, and Baylor. So, I mean, you're in a major race, obviously, to land him. But I do think he's one of, if not the best safety in the entire state of Texas. I think he's just an absolute playmaker. He's physical in the run game, but also as a playmaking safety who forces turnovers. Again, that's something that they need. And the safety position is just one that I look at, and I just think they really have to add some talent and some competition and some depth to that room. And so I think Josh Lair is probably the prospect I would go with, even though there's a couple other guys that would be very nice to have in this class as well.
I know that it's impossible to have recruiting conversations now without bringing up name, image, likeness, and that the effect that it's had. Especially, I know why there's a lot of pessimism is because when you mention that crop of schools that he's leaning towards, there's some big money NIL schools that Baylor is competing with, and I know they can do what they can do where they can do it, but my question is, how much of an effect have you really seen based on your coverage of a camp like this last year or the year prior or the very many years you've been doing this now? Has it been notable, the type of prospect that that is showing up now versus maybe even a couple of years ago because of what they feel like they can actually do, or pull, I should say, in recruiting?
That's a very interesting question, and I kind of get what you're hinting at there. Just as far as the talent that they have on campus, for these official visit weekends, and if you look at this weekend, if you're going to go just by position, not necessarily the mass amount, not necessarily having 15 or 16 guys on campus, but if you just narrow it down to what rank is this guy? What rank is this guy at? I mean, it's pretty balanced. I mean, they have 3 3-stars and 3 4-stars on campus. So, I mean, if 50% of your visitors are 4-star prospects, you're doing something right. And so while it is smaller, I think a big part of that might have to do with what you're saying with the NIL thing. I think that the guys that they're bringing on official visits are guys that they believe fit their culture and fit just this Baylor program, the person over player, the just kind of what Baylor's looking for, and maybe not the guys who are looking for just a payday and not just looking for NIL. Because I think Baylor's at a point right now where if they get a feeling that a guy's only in it for NIL, and that's the sole thing they're looking for, then they're just going to be out. Because honestly, it's tough to waste your time on something like that when, you only have a finite amount of resources and you're not going to be able to spend it all on one player. And so I think that's a big part of it as well, right? Is that you got to focus your targets on specific guys, spend the NIL money where you can or use it strategically, but not necessarily have, 15 guys on campus and then, try to find a way to get all of them the same NIL resources. I just think that's really tough and not really the strategy that Baylor is working with. And we'll see if that pays off and we'll see if it doesn't. But I would say right now, I still feel good about the position that they're in, even with, them not competing at the highest level when it comes to NIL.
How has the Austin Novosad situation that they had last year fundamentally changed how they approach things? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not sure that it's necessarily just the Austin Novosad thing. I think that this is more of those things where you start to see it more. I just feel like there's more players that you see that, hey, you know what, we're probably not going to be able to land this guy because, maybe too much of their focus is on NIL, and I would say that, in Austin's circumstance, it really never was about NIL because he could have gotten NIL at A&M. He could have gotten NIL at, Ohio State. And I know the NIL at Oregon is different, but I would just say that throughout his recruitment, that really wasn't a focus for him. Now you could say at the end, maybe it was, but that's not something that you can really predict. And so I think right now this is more about just changing their philosophy, not based on one recruit, but more so just based on finding guys that are right for their culture. And really, that's not really a changing of their philosophy. That's just been the way Dave Aranda and the staff has approached it. But now NIL is just becoming such a bigger factor that you got to find ways to not just work around it, but utilize it in a proper way for your program.
All right. So what kind of for those that don't really know and how all this works, what actually takes place this weekend when these guys get on campus?
Right. So, having only 6 guys on campus or 7 guys really is beneficial because it's going to allow them to do a whole lot more, I think, than a normal official visit weekend. But the main things are you're going to have them going and watching workouts. They're going to get to see the team workouts, see the kind of things that they go through during the summer months. Obviously, it's not a true practice going on right now. You'll have your coaches meetings, so players will get to talk with their specific coaches. They'll get to talk to Dave Aranda one-on-one. Most of these guys are going to get to talk to every coach, but of course having that position coach meeting is always big because it gives them an idea of their expectations when they come to Baylor, their fit in the defense or offensive scheme that Baylor's running, and also just building a better relationship with that coach in particular. Academics are another big thing. If a guy wants to early enroll, a lot of times they kind of get that figured out this weekend. But also just kind of figuring out what Baylor has to offer on the academic side is always really important. They usually go and see housing during official visits as well, see where you would live if you ended up at Baylor. And then, of course, you're going to have dinners. You're going to have the at McLean Stadium going up there and just having the buffet spread and having an amazing dinner. They'll probably go out one night to dinner as well. I think that's happened in the past too. So a lot of different things like that just to build those relationships and obviously allow parents to meet the coaches to meet the parents, and just continuing to build those relationships are the biggest thing while these recruits get to know a lot more about Baylor.
Grayson, a quick basketball question before we let you go. Olivia Kumwa not coming to Baylor. He's on his way to Michigan. Grant Nelson is down to Bama and Arkansas. It maybe seems like Jalen Bridges might be coming back. Do you get the feeling that that's where it's going to finally end up here with them and their pursuit of that last player to fill out the roster?
Right. So my expectation going into this was that they were going to get one of those 3 guys. And I would say that it didn't necessarily matter which one of the three, but they had to get one of the three just to fill their starting spot at a forward position. And I think going into it, you would have liked Jalen Bridges to be that guy because he was the guy that was at Baylor last year. You'd like to see him continue to develop at Baylor, develop with a culture and bring that culture to the new guys on the roster. And so at the end of the day, if he's the one that comes back, I think that is honestly the ideal situation for Baylor. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, what if you could get two of the three? And to that, I would say, yeah, that would be great, but that would have been more of a luxury than an absolute necessity, because if another guy came in, then that guy was coming off the bench. And I don't think that any of these guys wanted to come off the bench. That they're better players than that in my eyes. And they're guys who are looking at going to the pros the next year. And so they want an opportunity to play more minutes. And so I think for Olivier Combois, that was a big part of it. He gets to go to Michigan and be the best player on that team. Whereas if he comes to Baylor, he's got the unknown of Jalen Bridges potentially coming back. And then it's also the factor of, well, he's still probably not going to be the best player on that team, even if Bridges doesn't come back. And so I think that was probably a big part of his decision. And ultimately, I think these dominoes that are falling, the fact that they didn't bring Nelson in on a visit, the fact that Combois ended up choosing Michigan because I don't believe he could get guarantees at Baylor. For all those reasons, it leads me to believe that Jalen Bridges is coming back. And if he's not coming back, it leads me to believe that at least Baylor has a really good backup plan, whatever that may be. But yeah, I think my expectations right now are that Jalen Bridges is going to come back to Baylor. I still feel pretty good about that. It just does get kind of weird as we've waited, kind of this long. You would have expected that to have happened a little bit sooner, but I still feel pretty good about it right now.
Grayson Grunhafer, SicEm365.com. Grayson, have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
Well, there you go. I was a little surprised about Olivier Combois not coming. I thought that was Garrett, especially, I'd kind of gotten the feel that was maybe more likely, but
yeah, I mean, the vibe you were hearing was it was going to work out. And honestly, the way when the news dropped, it definitely caught me off guard. But if you can get Bridges back, I think that's definitely crucial. And you have to get him at this point.
Yeah, you got to have somebody. I mean, you do. They don't have anybody else who does that. I mean, Caleb Lohner, could be better this year, but they need somebody who does what those guys all do and well to kind of fill out the roster. So, yeah, I was a little bit surprised. But, going to Michigan and getting what I'm sure is great guaranteed NIL money shouldn't be a shock to anybody.
No, I mean, especially when Hutchinson's gone. That bag's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When we come back, Deion Sanders and Pat Narduzzi have a small beef. And Pat Narduzzi is going to be the coach who calls out the transfer portal the most, but he uses it too. I'm going to get Craig's thoughts on it. Garrett, I want your thoughts on this too. It's not like something's going to last forever, but I did like Deion's response to it. This is 365 Sports.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, the Bauer family, and what a place. It's a hometown grocery store feeling and products. When you walk through the front door, right in front of you, there's always a couple of different specials they might be showing off and letting you know about, but there's 4 different aisles of what you can do to pick and choose, whether it's pasta, canned goods, chips, peanuts, etc. And then in the very back right, you can find marinades and seasonings for what you want to put on the product that you're going to grill, bake, maybe stir fry. There's a butcher shop, full-service butcher shop with seafood, pork, poultry, and beef, and the beef is from hamburger meat, ribeyes, New York strip, bone-in ribeyes, even those big tomahawk ribeyes, and if you want sirloin steak too. There's a full-service bakery, cakes and cookies and more, and fresh baked bread. Also, there's a coffee shop there if you want to with a drive-through window, and they do have frozen kolaches. They have kolaches that are fresh, but they also have bags of frozen kolaches you can pick and choose as you want. Waco Custom Marketplace with New York Strip, Select, Choice, and Prime from $8.25 a pound to $16.50 a pound. Bone-in and boneless pork butt, both under $2 a pound. Rock coil sausage, $2.99 a pound, and mahi-mahi at $12.99 a pound. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
The future's bright, the time is now. College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run, and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
So Garrett and I have been for the last, I would say, 5 hours.
At least,
trying to get a Washington State guest on the show. And everyone we ask responds to us, which is great because having a no is better than having a nothing. But no one who covers that program, Craig, seems to want to talk about this today. And so it's kind of strange. I'd like to have somebody who is there to kind of explain, that like it is better to hear from beat writers. The great John McClaney we have on the show every week. Sometimes over the history, you'll ask him about a story, especially like involving the Texans, and he'll be like, and you can tell he's already mad because, look, everybody that covers the team in the city that you're asking about this, for his example, Houston, already knew it, and now it's become a big story because ESPN decided to run with it. And then we asked the question because, it feels like the right time, but that's why I didn't want to just have us sit here and talk about it. We like to get experts, people who cover the team on the ground, but apparently nobody from Wazzu is available today.
Okay.
Yeah, so
well,
it's
I
just
guess,
kind of a strange
we're
thing.
SOL then.
Yeah, it's just kind of a strange thing.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's just not wanting to take time of their Friday afternoons out on the West Coast, even though Pullman's not the coast per se, but yeah, I mean they're unavailable, and that's fine. I don't think that this is the equivalent of a major coaching hire or actual finality on the Pac-12 TV deal or anything like that. This is yet again another AD talking. Now he's talking in a different setting than he's talked previously, as this is with the actual university as opposed to the one-on-one sit down with the booster president or a regent or someone like that. And so yeah, I mean it's interesting stuff, but I can also see from their standpoint of like, well, what are we talking about? Too. Like, because if it's going to be just questions about, does this mean the Pac-12? Like, I probably would be a little bit annoyed by that if I was some of them as well. So, I can see where maybe that's in mind a little bit, but I don't know. I'm speculating on what the reason could be, and they could be numerous, and it's fine because we'll move on. And really the gist of it to know is that Washington State's had some financial issues. They need to get those sorted out, and they've made it clear that they're going to get that sorted out and figured out. And during that discussion, there was an indication by Kirk Schultz that there is a TV deal on the way, and even within the next couple of weeks, and that it should be on par or close equivalent to what they've been making. So obviously not a bump, but I guess would keep it somewhat in line if you're speaking purely TV money with potentially the Big 12. And that's kind of where we are. I think I hit the high spots, but yeah, more teasing of a Pac-12 deal. It's coming. They've seen it. They apparently feel okay about it. To what extent it's official and they can actually even accept it, I don't know that. But the fruit's dangling, and yeah, they gotta figure out their finances. And NIL's wreaked a little havoc on that, and athletic spending has wreaked some havoc as part of NIL, as you would guess. And that sounds like a problem that I don't really think is all that necessarily interesting for our audience, but for Wazzu fans would be, something of interest to be sure. But, when you do have Kirk Schultz out there, I can understand why there's a number of people that go, okay, whatever, and they just don't buy anything that he's saying, because the last time that he spoke, one of the last times that he spoke, when he sat down one-on-one on campus with, I think it was one of their regents or something, and did like this hour-long interview on NIL and on everything. And then the budget thing came out after, like a few days later, that they were apparently struggling. So that would have been, I'm sure the probably biggest topic had they, or maybe they wouldn't have done that interview if that would have been more of a public thing. But, that last time around, he kind of said some of the similar things, and that was a while ago. And also I can understand why some people, are like, yeah, whatever, show us the deal, because this has happened a lot of times. And I actually saw somebody put together a timeline. And look, from our perspective, we're not making a big deal out of today, and what he had to say, because I don't think it's anything earth-shattering. I think that, maybe it confirms that there's no concrete thing in place just yet. So if you feel like that allows room for everything to crack and fall apart, and that's what you're rooting for, then you certainly have, a little bit of reason to continue down that road based on what he had to say. I also think if you're on the opposite side and you feel like everything's moving forward to kind of stay status quo, that you could read into what he had to say, and you could, in theory, walk away and feel good about that if you believe that the Pac deal's on the way. But the biggest cause for eye rolling was this timeline I saw somebody put together, and to give credit to RCJ Graves on Twitter for doing this. But just, this is not to bash on or anything, but this just shows you how ridiculous this has been. So back on December 20th, or the first week of December 22nd to early 2023, okay, that one doesn't make very much sense right off. Okay, that was the unity statement. Okay, is the way that this was outlined. So you had the first week of 12/22 in early 2023. You had the unity statement that was released. I'm sure we can go dig up that tweet that, they put out the little graphic, everybody's on board and staying together. So that was the end of December. Then you had on February the 13th, Schultz talking about a deal in the very near future. Well, that was 4 months ago. Then you had on a day later, I guess it was Anderson There's mid-March you had Anderson. The way this is laid out is kind of confusing. It's not ideal for me to kind of read this off here. But you had Anderson in mid-March talking about it's coming. Another day later, had the next couple 3 weeks. Then you had a Pac-12 writer, not John Wilner. I think Wilner does a good job. I do enjoy his stuff, actually. Yeah. I know he takes a lot of crap, but I like John Wilner. But you had another writer that said, well-placed conference source, on March the 3rd, Big 12 beating the Big 12 money is a layup, was what was said back then. That was in March. Then you had Crow from, Arizona State, come out a couple weeks later. They're in the final stages of the deal. Then there's Robbins a couple of times there in mid-March talking about the next couple of weeks. And then there was a deadline of April 15th, and the number's going to be great. And that came and went. And then you had Randall come into the picture on March 20th. Said they had a ways to go. So 5 days after, the deal's going to be this, and there's a deadline, days later, another person says there's still a ways to go. Robbins is back on March 30th. Nothing imminent. After just saying 2 weeks previously that there was nothing throughout April, I guess. And then here comes Kirk Schultz. Deal all but done, but for the optics. That was 2 months ago, or that was a month ago today. And then Schultz again a couple days later saying it's going to be 6 weeks or so. And then there's 3 more examples of this. So that's the trail. And I could probably take this and maybe organize a little bit easier for myself to be able to read it better for you all to understand. But now we've had, in the last month, Anderson's come back out and we've seen his comments, and it was summertime deal. And then Schultz came back out and said next few weeks to a month, and now we've got all the stuff that's coming out this week. So that's kind of a paper trail of just the various times that something's been mentioned, and you see why some have elected not to say anything at all, because they would have been saying things 6 months ago that still aren't true, even if at the time what they were saying was true, or whether they were BSing for one reason or another, I don't know. But you've had Schultz and Anderson and Robbins and Randall and I think that's and Crow all having little spots where they've said something at one point, since the start of the year began, and then writers as well. But yeah, I'm sure there's even a couple that are missing here. And I just say all that to say that's just the trail that it's the wild goose chase, man, of is it close? Is it not? And that's been the song and dance since January, if not going back farther than that. But that's an outline of what's publicly been said. So you can see why it's been such a back and forth kind of a thing, and why people don't necessarily just dive right into believing exactly what they're told. Because if you did, then you would have thought, based on one of these quotes back in February, that by June 9th, certainly something was going to have, and that's created as much of a chaos as anything. And that's also probably why Kliavkoff has said nothing, because he would just be another item on this list,
I do wonder why they've constantly had the idea that it's always 2 weeks away.
That's
the weird part about it, that even if it's going to get done, putting an exact timetable on it after the first one came and went, you should have, the answer should have been look, we're totally confident it's going to get done. We have no real timetable in our heads. Yeah. Would love to. That'd be great for everybody, but this thing is complex, and I just can't speak to it. And if you just kept answering I don't know. I really don't know where it completely is now. There's different possibilities we're all working through. Then while it's a non-answer, is still better than so now you've got people because you told them it's going to come, we think if it's not done by the end of the NCAA tournament that would be a huge failure. So then at the end of the NCAA tournament, people are so where were you guys on that?
Yeah.
And then that's when it got kicked down the road again. So if they had not set out these arbitrary deadlines, then
it's almost like they wouldn't be getting a lot of the hell that they complain about.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. All that garbage being slung is as a result of a lot of the quotes that were put out there by people saying it's coming, and then when people who are desiring to know whether it was or not, and desiring to know because of the impact it could have on them, and they blow right past that deadline, and then they do it for the 4th or 5th time, and we're up to probably near double digits at this point. Then you can kind of understand, maybe not the vitriol, maybe not the nasty back and forth sometimes that can occur, but you can understand sort of the perspective of somebody who's not even following that closely, going damn, didn't they say that was going to be done? What's going on? And so, yeah, and I didn't even mention, and somebody I guess else in the comments, but there was the writer who had the dominoes are going to start falling. Remember that one? Back in like March, like the dominoes are about to fall. Watch this date, and then that date we blew right past that date, and then sure enough, here we are. But maybe this time the stuff that was spoken about today really is the final teaser. But yeah, you can pretty much put two and two together on why a lot of people are just sort of rolling their eyes at any comment that something's coming soon. But I still maintain, just based on the stuff we've heard this week, like I don't get the feeling at all that everything's about to fall apart. And
no,
if anything, I feel like everything's kind of remained status quo, honestly, because the case the entire time has been everybody wanting to stay together. And, if the money's close enough, like I've always just wondered of like, what is the expectation of how much of a differential there would be that would create that? Because it isn't something as simple as $5 million. Now, I understand there's the exposure piece as well. How much you factor that in financially as a loss. Like, is it $5 million if you're on streaming more? Is it 15? Is it 25 million? Because then that's when you start to go and perk my eyebrows up a little bit of like, that's significant amounts of money. Research be damned and all of that. Like, that's significant athletics revenue. But is there anything in the water to indicate that would be that monstrous of a gap? I've never seen that. I've always seen like it's 5 million, it's 10 million difference. And then the streaming component, which again is I don't know how you calculate that exactly. So I sit here after all this and all saying all that I feel like we're pretty much where we've always been this entire time. And if you choose to believe them that it's close, cool. If you don't, that's cool too. But I definitely don't see any indication that like Colorado's being announced on Monday. And if I'm wrong on that, I'll own it. But I've also not predicted that they would be announced at any point. So I'm just going with what I've always felt like and nothing more.
To me, the three scenarios in likelihood of happening are this. Number one, the most likely, they all stay together, and we'll see after a couple years of the 12-team playoff and what other expansion ideas each conference has, in the next round of TV deals, where we are. I think that's probably where it is, so that they can get to the finish line. Two, to me, less likely to happen, but more likely than option three is that, a couple of teams leave because they can get out now. They've decided that their future is better somewhere else, and they're going to get out now while they have where it's easier to do it. It's easier to do it. They don't want to do this again in 5 years, and they're just going to get out now. And they replace those teams, and they'll still have 10 teams because San Diego State and SMU will replace the two that they lost. And
that's a piece that I'm really interested in.
And they'll move on. And then because I think those teams are going to get added regardless.
I think San Diego State's pretty much a lock. Yeah, I don't know about beyond that. Yeah.
Well, I think San Diego State is going to get added, and then there'll be another team in there.
I almost feel like they get added regardless. Yes, like that's happening.
Somebody's going to be in there, like an SMU or a Boise State or something. I mean, I don't know, but just for the sake of evening things out and not having an 11-team conference, you're going to probably add San Diego State and then see what happens after that. But then the third one would be the nuclear option, where we get to the end of the month. They don't really have that great of a plan, and then it explodes. But the problem with that being is that, if I just don't. It's not. The Big 12 just can't take everybody, right? They couldn't just turn around and be like, all right, we'll take everybody who wants to come here. And then there'll be like 3 schools sitting back there going, oh, all right, well, we just stayed here because we didn't want to do that. So that's not going to happen. And then the Big 10 doesn't seem to be ripe for anything. The SEC's not even interested in any of them. So, like, again, you're right back where you started. So staying together is the best thing. And then maybe you lose a couple teams just because they're tired of the rigmarole or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Like that to me would be the second most likely thing, in that they're like, okay, well, particularly in Colorado's case, like the Pac-12 hasn't worked out for us. We're going to go back to the Big 12, and then Arizona goes, well, we're not great in it either, except for basketball. We might as well go to the Big 12 and, then see where we go from there. But I've never been able to wrap my head around how it's all going to work out if everything shook down and a conference completely collapsed, a Power 5 conference completely collapsed, because
it wouldn't collapse entirely. It would be reduced to a shell of itself.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like I'm sure people view the Big 12. It would be similar to that. And I don't know. I feel like the Big 12's actually kind of kept its identity, because I don't think the identity was necessarily always just Texas and Oklahoma. Like, that was the eyeballs and the ratings and the talk most of the time, but I don't know that was the identity. Maybe people feel differently. It doesn't really matter, quite frankly. But, there's that perception that, you could be falling to a different level or tier than you were on previously. I think the Big 12 was able to, in a quick amount of time, scrounge up and investigate and discover some new possibilities, and then make some good additions that, allowed you to stay about right where you were. And whether or not the Pac-12 could do that with those rumored additions as well, we will see. But it's interesting, because in their messaging, they definitely haven't made it sound like they're absolutely taking at least 2 teams. It's always sounded like San Diego State's pretty much a foregone conclusion, and then it's a question of, like, do we do anything beyond that? And I don't even know, like, is San Diego State an automatic, though, if everything just stays as is? I think so, but I'm not exactly sure on that.
Yeah.
That part, and that's why I think that part is kind of, maybe just in this area at least, because there's so much discussion about the other side and the Big 12 side of it. But I'm fascinated. Like, SMU getting the Pac-12 invite would be very noteworthy. Like, that would be something to talk about. And same thing with San Diego State. But yeah, I don't know. Like, they definitely don't sound like they're going and grabbing 4 no matter what, and they're going to stabilize it for the long haul and all of that stuff. But yeah, I don't even know what the percentages would be, like, on status quo, because one of them said, we got to figure out after we see the TV deal or something like that, of, are we going to be the Pac-10 and just stay that way? Or are we going to be the Pac-12 again? Do we go and do that? So that's a part of this, too, that remains a little bit of a mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a break right here, and then I'll come back and we'll do that Dion story, which it's to me, it's kind of fun. I like it when coaches have little beefs. It's entertaining to me, and then it's over. But you could not pick 2 different dudes than Deion Sanders and Pat Narduzzi. Absolutely. And look, it's a valid it's an argument that has some valid points to it and discussing. And I'm kind of curious again, Craig, to get your opinion on it. This is 365 Sports.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway, now proud to offer men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you are like most men and you have that stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to Petty Clinic team. Tell them Smokey sent you for a free consultation with Dr. Kent Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Why did you get into this business?
We kind of were born into it, and it's been for several generations. Our family's been in the beef business, the ranching business, and we've specifically got into the beef business back in about 2015 when me and my son decided to form Texas Beef House and sell directly to the public.
Aaron, everyone knows about Wagyu and how elite that is when it comes to beef. What separates you from anyone else that may do this in this type profession?
We selected out Wagyu mainly because it's such a quality beef and it's consistent. Some beef, some breeds, you may have a good animal every now and then, but Wagyu produces really consistently good beef every time.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. I've brought this up, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, cast of thousands behind us. And thank you for the $10 super chat earlier, Jordan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It had like an emoji with it, so it's just $10 super chat. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Jordan.
So, yeah, especially if it's one, like I can say a super chat and then I don't have to maybe look stupid answering a question. So I appreciate it. Those are my favorite kind.
Yeah,
not that I mind your questions, but, you know, anytime you answer a question, you have a chance of looking stupid. So, you know.
Yep.
I mean, even if it's small chance. So, but anyway, Deion Sanders and Pat Narduzzi are beefing right now. And Pat Narduzzi at the ACC meetings a week ago, talking about Deion's massive roster turnover, they said. That's not the way it's meant to be. That's not what the rule intended it to be. It was not to overhaul your roster. We'll see how it works out, but that, to me, looks bad on college football coaches across the country. The reflection is on one guy right now, but when you look at it overall, those kids that have moms and dads and brothers and sisters and goals in life, I don't know how many of those 70 that left really wanted to leave or they were kicked in the butt to get out. And then Deion said, about Pat Narduzzi, he's not mad at me. He's using me to shoot bullets at another coach who he has an issue with, which would be Lincoln Riley, because Lincoln Riley took Biletnikoff winner and eventual first-round draft pick Jordan Addison away from him, and so that's where he, his beef started. I don't know who he is. If he walked in here right now, I wouldn't know him. And that's true. Not every coach, nobody all knows each other. But it is an interesting thing. Look, I think if you take Deion's personality out of the issue of turning the whole roster over, which to have a rational discussion about it, I think you have to. Because Deion's personality is not going to change. Deion's about Deion, and everybody knows that. And you either like Deion or you
Deion's
don't.
about the Lord. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and I kind of look at him, even though not to this degree. Look, Lance Armstrong did a lot of terrible things to people, but he also raised millions upon millions of dollars for cancer. So sometimes good things come out of bad. And Deion does things for people. He also does things for himself. So I think you have to, look at the yin and yang of everything.
That's not really what the partisan question here either. This has nothing to do with the story.
Anyway,
yeah.
But if you take his personality out of it, look, Deion took over a team that's a 1-11, a Power 5 team that was as bad as you can get and as irrelevant as you can get, that just 30 years ago, and even less time than that, but 30 years ago was winning national championships. 20 years ago was constantly contending for conference championships, to now where they're not. They're not even close to that. So I can see, look, the rules say you can turn over the whole roster. So he went and he turned over pretty much the whole roster. That's what it is. I also see Pat Narduzzi's argument as like, yeah, that's a really harsh reality of things. But, Deion Sanders isn't beholden to any of those guys. The rules say he's not. So, yeah, while it sucks, there are harsh realities in this business. And I think that Pat Narduzzi wrestling with the ethics of it, that's fine. And if he doesn't want to do that, that's fine. But he wasn't put in that same position that Deion was. When he took over Pitt was not nearly as bad as Colorado is. So, the rules weren't in place for him to do that at the time when he took over that job. And two, he didn't really need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't really want to crown either guy like a winner or a loser here in their little roundabout argument.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if you'd even classify it really as an argument, but just throwing kind of shots back and forth. I think it's a little out of line what, Narduzzi said in terms of kind of pinning it on Deion. Now, he says, that it's all focused on one guy right now, and then he obviously refers to the roster attrition and how many of those guys actually wanted to leave versus were kicked out, and obviously that's all directed at Deion as well. And the NIL not being used the way it's supposed to. Well, Pat, that's the case around the country, man. Like, that's all over. That's not just Colorado. I mean, that's the case all over. And, it's like a lot of things is it allowed? Yes? Then what's the problem? Like if you don't like the rule, that's fine. Then find a way to change it. I know that's what everybody's trying to do right now. But technically what he's doing is not illegal. I mean, he's doing what he can to construct his roster legally and above the rules. And now I'm sure somebody will say, there's no way like NIL money or tampering and all of that. Like I get that. But, again, that's going on all across college football. So to act like Deion's the only one that's doing that, I think is unfair to single him out in that way. I think Deion kind of nailed it. And look, I'm not like everything Deion says is gospel by any means, but I do feel like he's right that Narduzzi's lashing out at the overall situation, but then kind of, throwing it at Deion specifically, and that's unfair and because he is not mad at just Deion. He's mad at the whole situation, just like most college football coaches are mad, or college basketball, or whoever involved in university athletics right now is mad at this situation. It was launched and it somewhat abrupt, and certainly they hadn't figured out all of the rules or logistics or all of that. It was just kind of a blind launch a couple of years ago, and it's led to exactly what everybody predicted back then when it was launched the way that it was. We all knew that's not exactly what everybody thought it was going to look like. Under the table, worse than ever. Poaching rosters, worse than ever. Transfers galore, worse than ever. It's exactly what everybody predicted it would be because it was not on a super solid foundation when it all began. And, a lot of that, too, is on schools, the NCAA, for just feeling like they never had to prepare themselves because it was just never going to happen. If we just close our eyes and wish hard enough, like we're just never going to have to worry about this, and then reality set in, and now they've been scrambling ever since like chickens with their heads cut off. So don't be mad at, Deion for using it the way it's allowed to be used right now, even if there may be a little thing or two here and there that's technically a tamper or whatnot, but that could again be a you could point all over the country, including to Lincoln Riley, like Narduzzi did. Narduzzi clearly he's right. Like he could have gone in more on Lincoln Riley than he did. A subliminal shot at at Deion. So I'm not mad at Pat Narduzzi. I understand his frustrations. I do think that he probably focused a little bit too much on the Deion thing, or that's the way it could be perceived, versus Lincoln Riley, for example, who did take his Biletnikoff award-winning star player last year. But this is just the frustration that's been boiling up, just leaking over into the public, and we hear it from time to time, whether it's an athletic director or a head coach. They all have their various quotables every week about the same type of deal, but it definitely gets a bit more attention because it's Deion he's referring to versus, just vaguely saying NIL is a problem and there's poaching rosters. Okay, well, then you and 100 other coaches have said that. But the fact that he mentions Deion or points to Deion, and then Deion, of course, fires back, well, that's why it's a story on these websites.
And it's more, I think, the turning over the roster thing to me, there's going to be some kids that aren't going to have their opportunities again. But Pitt does that too, though. I mean, every school does that where, your career is kind of over, or at least you're at a point where you can't help the team anymore, and they tell you, like, look, hey, we're moving on from you. I mean, that's how it works. It is not the NFL roster shuffle that Deion did in Boulder, but again, he's available to do it, and it's going to be really hard for them to win more than 3 or 4 games this year with a roster full of guys who've never played together before, most of whom came after spring.
And to Narduzzi's point, what he did with the roster is not what the intentions are. Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody probably thought they should have, but I doubt anybody probably thought, and I don't know what they could have done really to prevent it anyways, but certainly you weren't hoping that you'd have the type of massive roster overhauls that you've seen at Colorado. But, he's putting his fingerprints on the program and doing what he can within the rules as best we know. And, whether that was the intention or not, that's how he's using it. Now, guess what? If it blows up in his face and they suck for a good 2 years and all the buzz dies off until he goes somewhere else, until he gets it to where it needs to be, then, maybe this is the one and only time we really see this kind of a massive overhaul, and it's sort of just a one-time thing. But if it's successful, then I got bad news for Pat Narduzzi. Watch how many new coaches come in and say, screw the 15 changes we were going to make, to at least keep it sort of medium level and not some major outcry. We're going to go the Deion route and just tear them all up. Tear all you 12, you can say the other 70, good luck to you. And that's basically what he did. And I don't know how, I don't think there's been documented how much changeover on a. I don't want to encourage more charts, actually. Never mind. I don't know how well you can compare the numbers that are out there for Lincoln Riley's turnover at USC versus Deion's at Colorado versus so-and-so's at this place versus so-and-so's at this place. I mean, I know Deion's up there near the top because we haven't seen anything close to the 60s or whatever it's in at this point. But yeah, it's a unique way to use it. He's getting a lot of flack for it. He's also getting some praise for it. And bottom line, Paul, is it will all matter when he hits the field this upcoming season and beyond that. That will be the big I told you or told you so or should have listened or what have you, because if they suck, he's going to have a mulligan year. But you're also going to have to show a little something, and this could very well end up as much in a disaster as it does in them competing for a Pac-12 crown. We'll have to see. He's either going to be a genius or somebody who should have probably done a little bit less. And, we'll all observe and have our takes on that when that time comes. But it's really hard to tell right now what's good or what's what, as in terms of the football success. But on paper, just the chaos of that roster turnover, I can see where that's concerning to coaches. But it's not Deion's fault.
No.
There's a lot of people with their hands in that jar.
No, and, when it comes to policing, tampering, and all that, I just don't know what you can do.
Well, they clearly can't.
I mean, there's you can't subpoena the kid's phone records. You can't follow him around everywhere he goes.
Right.
You can't look at this DMs on social media. You can't, there are so many ways to get in touch with people now that, you can't, that they don't have access to. And you can't, what law would it be against for a coach? You can't pass a law that says one coach can't call a kid. You can't do it. There's just nothing they can do. So they have to.
Well, there is, but they don't want to do it. 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 sign these guys up like NFL player. I mean, that's the only way to do it. Tampering rules, no contact between this free agency period and this, end of the free agency period, and the draft. Your recruiting classes are in this designated spot. Like, they've got that loosely. Obviously, there's a couple signing days, but like in terms of if you want to get rid of all the non-certified agents / trainers / whoever, you want to get rid of the tampering, and you want to do. I mean, the only real way to do that is to have some ironclad laws in place, and they're obviously attempting to do that to some extent. But yeah, I mean, I don't know beyond that how you could police it, and obviously that's why it's been a talking point for so long, is because nobody does. Nobody has a good answer outside of the answer that nobody really wants to hear. Save for those who do want to see mini NFL and contracts and CBAs and all those types of things. If that's not what you want and you want more of the college football that you knew, there's not an answer outside of it not being the same college football that you knew in a major, major way, which would be those types of contracts.
Well, and the other thing is once you do that, you also the student athletes right now have the transfer portal, which is wide open. Well, they'd have to give away some of that because then you can't just be.
There's dates, and then the graduates are more free. But yeah, that would have to be sharpened for sure.
They have to give away some of that, some of that freedom that they had and all that. But maybe it's better all the way around. I mean, it'd be easier to keep track of. But yeah, there's nothing that they can do about it. To your point, that they want to do about it.
Yeah, like the way they'd like to be able to.
The way that they just can't, because again, all it takes is somebody going to a high school coach and saying.
It's so unique. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Just going to a high school coach and going, hey, I noticed that he's the third wide receiver on that depth chart. Would he want to come here and be the first one? Or I noticed that team is 7-5. We were 11-1 last year. Would he like to come here and help us go 12-0?
Or, hi, Mrs. So-and-so. I'm Coach so-and-so. Oh, that's right. Your son at UTSA is interested in coming to Oregon? That's interesting. I don't know. Outside of having a draft, how do you police that, though, even still, the recruiting side of it?
Yeah.
Like, that's the part that I don't understand is even with all these rules, these NIL rules and all that, like, how are you still doing that? Because you're not cutting off DMs. Like, what policing is there going to be to make sure that that's all still on the up and up? Because this isn't the NFL draft where you just say, oh, it's our turn. We pick Joey Nelson from, Wichita Falls, Texas. You're still signing classes the way you're signing them. Now, how you get them to sign is different because of what you're luring them with, at least sort of different from what it's always been. But yeah, there's nothing to stop the tampering from my vantage point in any way, shape, or form, even with rules put in place, unless it was just like if you get caught, you are banished to the nether realm of football coaching. But beyond that, I don't know. So that is what it is. I don't think either guy looks terrible in this. Narduzzi's fine. He's frustrated just like a lot of other people. Just probably should have widened his criticism a little bit or kept it less specific. And Deion's defending what he's doing, and that's totally understandable as well. And who knows? That'll make a great bowl game maybe. If Colorado makes a bowl game, Pitt makes a bowl game, we'll see. But there's a little storyline for bowl officials in case either of those teams or both those teams get to 6 wins. Let's have Narduzzi versus Deion.
Yeah, Pitt has a better shot, I think, because their schedule is not as difficult.
Deion makes a bowl in year one, then everybody's gonna be like, "Whoa!" You think the hype's out of control right now, or the excitement's out of control right now? Let him have proof of concept, and then this thing will really go on to another level.
Yeah, with that schedule alone, I mean, just
for sure.
And again, you're trying. Yeah,
I mean, I was just thinking the irony in this isn't Pitt's quarterback this year a transfer?
Yeah,
that's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's weird how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real weird.
Wasn't Pitt's quarterback last year a transfer?
I think so.
Okay. I mean, he didn't turn over his whole roster, but
he's
talking. Didn't have to.
It's one of those where it's very selective. It's like that was only one guy.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the guy who took 70 players. 70 is the difference here, not the 2 or 3 that or 7 or 8 or 15 that I take every year. And you're absolutely right to point that out. By the way,
I got to tell you, if I took the Colorado job and I walked in and it was 80, I've got 85 scholarship players who are all that bad and couldn't win more than one game, I'd been like, I don't really feel the need to keep any of these guys other than can I actually get this done in the amount of time to make it worth mine and my coaching staff's while to do all 70 of these guys I'm going to send out if I know I can get 70 back, And really, there's only a few coaches that could do that, and Deion's one of them because he's Deion Sanders. Before he's a coach of anything, he's prime. I mean, that's so.
Yeah, we know.
Yes, I mean, so it's like Lady Gaga coming to be the music teacher. Yeah, they're going to get more people coming to the music program because before she was the teacher at your school, she's Lady freaking Gaga. Right. So. That's just how it is. But
so let's pivot back to realignment for a second.
Okay.
Would you mind? Because there's just one note from Pete Thamel that I want to pass along here towards the end of the hour. We were talking about the Pac-12 stuff today with Pat Chun, Kirk Schultz, all getting together with the folks at Washington State to discuss budgets moving forward and NIL concerns and just what they're looking at. And there's a lot of comments out of there that you could take however you want to take them, levels of severity up to the eye of the beholder. Certainly those wanting cracks in the armor of the Pac-12 took, some of the comments as like it's a sure sign that all hell's breaking loose, and those who are pro everything remaining status quo probably took it as though like, oh, that has nothing to do with anything. I find myself just sort of like, I don't think it really caused much of a change, but Pete Thamel has provided some clarification because Kirk Schultz was talking about a TV deal, and he was saying, or at least there was some indication coming out of all that talk that it would be similar to what they've already been on. And, TV money-wise, I don't think that necessarily means a wide, large gap between them and the Big 12. Certainly not one that would appear to be so large that it would cause you to go, all right, we're out of here. So all that being said, he kind of promised that there would be something by the end of the month. And as I outlined, there's been about 15 of those statements since January. But Pete Thamel just now said a clarification on the Pac-12 TV contract number projections that came out of Washington State's board meeting today. Washington State officials have still not seen the potential Pac-12 TV contract numbers. The officials were explaining to their board about why they were not projecting a budget past their 2025 athletic budget, but there's still no projected hard numbers. So that will be taken, I'm sure, a lot of different ways as well. But yeah, they were not, when they said it's around the corner, it'll be relatively similar to what already, and all of that. They were going off of just projection still. So this is why, like we outlined with the whole lineup of it's coming soon, and the 15 times that's happened from like 4 different athletic directors and all of that, you complain about the trolls or about whatever, but you just keep feeding them, don't you? Because now you make these comments today, and then Pete Thamel comes out and is like, but to be clear, they still have no actual TV deal. Well, boom, here's gasoline in the match again. Big 12 trolls roll on. I mean, because that's how that's going to be taken. And that's also, and look, Kirk Schultz is in a board meeting. He's not speaking to Twitter and trying to win them over. He's doing his job. But it's almost like every time there's one of these, there's always that caveat of like, yeah, but the total story is this. And so for those wondering if today meant that there's real numbers and they know, and apparently not. Outside of projections, which I'd have to believe they've seen those. They had to have seen something at this point to have a loose idea. But yeah, nothing official from that today.
And look, there was some tension in the meeting because of the $11.5 million budget shortfall, or
it's a lot of money, man.
It's a lot of money. So yeah, there was tension there. I mean, I don't think that's, and those are the times where ADs and presidents, when you have to go in front of the board and say, why are we at $11.5 million in the hole? And then you have to tell them why, whether it's good reasons or not.
Sure.
You're still talking to a bunch of people who may not buy your line of reasoning. So,
well, and if I want to play, the instigator here, that could also be why, you're tempted in a way to look around, not like actually go follow through with it, but you're sitting here and you're like, all right, we still don't really have a good idea. And meanwhile, I got this other birdie in my ear saying, like, we know you will make this every year, and there's potential to make this, and we know that, and we know we're going to be on ESPN, and we know we're going to be on Fox, and we know, and that's a weapon in the hand of, the Big 12, so to speak, that, is the one that's missing right now from the Pac-12's arsenal. And it's the biggest, it's the thing. It's the entire thing. Every conversation rolls right back towards that. As far as like sports radio or Twitter or whatever, it all revolves around that same missing piece of the puzzle that remains missing. And until it's in place, then this whole, back and forth show will continue on. And, hopefully he's right, though, about it being by the end of the month. It gives him about 3 weeks, and then maybe that'll calm the waters a bit. But Thamel just ripped open a wound again by posting what he posted, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Katie Rader sent us a very interesting graphic from Open Doors on which conference spends the most on NIL, which I do think those numbers are short to change, but right now you'd be surprised at who the number one conference is. This is 365 Sports.
TFNB, your bank for life, is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
Couple of interesting things. We just had it was a nice little discussion during the break about, why this continues to happen on Realignment. We'll get to that in the next segment because I want to keep this one short so we can kind of get back on track here, Garrett. So before we go to Jerry Hill at 5:20, but Katie Rader from the chat room sent us this. This is top conferences for NIL compensation, and number 1, Craig, is the Big 12. Now, I think that factor is twofold. One is Texas Tech, who we talked about earlier. The second to me would be Texas. And 50% of those schools will not be in this conference a year from now. So I think that will change.
Well, Oklahoma, let's not pretend like they don't
too.
spend
Yeah.
NIL money. I'm pretty sure, and it all gets very confusing, but I'm pretty sure with the Sooners that they've got something similar to Texas Tech, if not even – I don't know how wide-ranging it is, but I'm pretty sure there's like a per like everybody makes $25K type of a setup there. I don't remember the exact details, but Texas does too, right? Like remember the offensive line class a couple years back where they all just got $50K or whatever that, in general, that's what it was reported as. I think Oklahoma's got something similar to Texas Tech and Texas in that regard. So, those three
Barry
alone.
Switzer runs it.
Yeah. Which was funny because he seemed to push back on the idea of NIL when he was on the show. And then I mentioned the players, like the momentum swinging, and all of a sudden he had to go. And it was really, really weird. It was like right after that question. But, yeah, he's involved in that, and they're doing like everybody else. So, those three, and I can't really speak to the rest of the schools, but they take a huge chunk for sure.
Number 2 is the Big Ten. No surprise there. Number 3, the Pac-12 spends more than the SEC, and the ACC comes in 5th there on that list. And of course, we don't have exact numbers here, but seeing the ACC in 5th is not a surprise to me because you have way more schools that are a lot smaller that won't than the big ones that do. I mean, Clemson and FSU and North Carolina alone are going to take up a big chunk of what their NIL dollars are as a conference. Spending at Miami is in there as well. But then you have Wake. Look, Wake lost Sam Hartman for 2 reasons. One, Notre Dame could bowl them over when it came to NIL. And 2, he needed to move into an offense potentially that would be better for him to showcase a potential NFL run for him. So those are the 2 things that happened, and I don't know which was more important than the other for Sam Hartman. I know what would be for me would be the money, but so he went to Notre Dame. Duke probably has a bunch of NIL for basketball, but maybe not so much for football. So it doesn't surprise me there. So seeing the SEC in 4th was kind of a shock to me.
Yeah, that green dot next to their name apparently means that they've bumped up since the last, 12 months, or like the very tiny writing there at the bottom. It mentions that the green icon arrow pointing up indicates an increase in category ranking from months 1 through 22, which is through April 30th of 2023 to months 1 through 20. Okay, so that's basically what that is. You can figure that part of it out, but it makes me very hesitant to believe this because I don't for one second think that those 3. The Big Ten, you could say, okay. The Big 12, I could kind of sort of like see an angle there, but still don't even believe that. Pac-12, same thing. So I guess this is what they could document and confirm. And I don't think they counted all the dollars that are actually floating out there because I have a really hard time believing that.
Look, Texas A&M alone.
Exactly.
Would lead me to believe that would be that they'd be higher on the list considering what they doled out for the recruiting class a year ago.
And if the Pac-12 is spending more NIL money than the SEC and ACC at this point, then like where's the money? There's not really money issues going on. I don't know. Like that doesn't seem to add up to me. Not to say that they don't know what they're doing by any means, but it's just it's hard. You would never have guessed that. You never said the SEC was in 4th on a list like that, and so it's just hard to believe.
Yeah,
but interesting to look at for sure.
And that is from Open Doors, is a company that if you're a college athlete, you can put your profile on Open Doors.
It might be their Open Doors numbers that they used, and not counting every other thing that's out there. That's possible too.
So, if, for example, if Graham or Emory were college athletes, they could put themselves on Open Doors. I don't know if maybe they can anyway.
Let's see. You got to read the fine print. Student athletes affiliated with these conferences have earned most compensation since July 1st, 2021, according to an anonymized transactions completed or disclosed through Open Doors.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's the Open Doors tallies and not necessarily the whole full meal deal.
So the Open Doors really loves the Big 12 because they're
working well for them.
Working out well for them. We'll take a break right here when we come back. Something to consider when you think about realignment as it pertains to what happened at Washington State today. This is 365 Sports.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones Investments and financial advisor Chuck Verno, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
During the break 2 breaks ago, talking about the Washington State thing and the difference, Craig, we did not did you mention that number on the air about Stuart Mandel, the $37 million total?
No, I don't know if I did or not. But yeah, we were talking about the whole Washington State meeting earlier today, Kirk Schultz, and talking about, the deal being soon and that could kind of fall flat with what they're expecting. And there's this whole debate about, well, if it falls where it is, like, what's that mean, TV money versus overall money? And then there's like a little bit of a debate about what numbers were actually being referenced. And then apparently, I guess the number that he was trying to point out, I guess he was comparing like the Big 12's total to, or their TV to the Pac-12. I don't know. It got very confusing on what exactly the little beef was there. But then he just came out a few minutes ago, I guess, to kind of clarify. And he said so he said Washington State's president gave a rare hint Friday. Read my article. It'll be close to the Big 12's the number overall as far as where the TV revenue will land. But then he followed up saying and then, obviously Pete Thamel had his response about talk about contract numbers for the Pac-12 and projections, but to be clear, Washington State hasn't seen still not seen potential contract numbers and blah, blah, blah. So then Mandel follows up again to clarify his tweet on potential numbers, and he said, lots of confusion in the comments over some of the figures. The Pac-12 announced $581 million revenue last year, which included $386 an average of $32 million per school from media rights. But not all of that gets distributed to the schools, so $37 total per school. So it's easier if you're just reading Twitter, obviously, but he's basically saying that based on what Schultz said, which Schultz now, Thamel has acknowledged, hasn't seen anything, but based on what Schultz said, $37 million total per school would be, I guess, the Pac-12 number that they would be working with. Whereas with the Big 12, why that's notable is that if you're looking at the total number of what the Big 12 would be looking at, it's more along the lines of like 50-51 based on what I saw, I guess, most recently. So that's $14 million difference every year, athletically, your total TV revenue package that's coming in. That seems significant.
Yeah. So,
$14 million. If that's what it is, the way it is laid out, $37 million total is what Stewart said. You're looking at whatever 50-51 for the Big 12, I believe. Total basketball, March Madness, all that included. That's $14 million per school difference, if I'm doing that right. If I'm getting something wrong there, please, I don't mind being wrong. I think I'm right on this, though, because we're talking about totals. So, yeah, that's I know that's not research dollars and all this other stuff, but if Washington State's sitting in a meeting today and the big to-do is about athletics overreaching as far as finances and not bringing in enough of the pie that it's affecting other areas, and then you're talking about a $14 million yearly difference alone just on TV rights, well, in Houston, we have maybe not a problem, but we have a little bit of an issue to clear up there, because I don't see how that's not nothing, quite frankly.
But and so even if the numbers, whatever the numbers wind up being,
right?
If they, if that's the deficit, if that winds up what it's being, then this is where it comes into the school-to-school thing, where if you're Washington State, then it's very important that this Pac-12 media deal get done so you can start chipping away at the at your own deficit, and so you can start planning out past 2025, which they can't do until they see the media deal. But every school is different. Stanford, because Washington State's athletic department currently is not subsidized by the university.
Yeah, Stanford's not having these meetings because athletics is not dipping into their pool of education and
if they did, Stanford cannot notice for a little while.
They'd be fine
because they've got this gigantic endowment. Cal subsidizes their athletic department. A lot of schools, more than people realize, do. The university subsidizes the athletic department. Not everybody is Ohio State, who just walks in and looks at their their numbers in the black every day. That's just not what happens. So that's where it comes down interesting school to school, because where do the schools, see their budget shortfalls? Who is in a similar situation to Washington State and things like that? That to me makes it maybe like a little bit more interesting when it comes to each individual school's long-term decision, because you're not all operating on the same level, even in your own conference. Even though you're getting the same, you're all going to get the same $37 million. Where you had before that $37 million is wildly different for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm not getting my pom-poms out and celebrating this like it's some sort of a victory or not, but it does leave the question of like, okay, for one, another example of going out there and kind of stating something. Now, I'll give Kirk Schultz the benefit of the doubt. I enjoyed listening to him about a month ago when he did his little one-on-one with the Board of Regents. I thought it was interesting to listen, and I don't know. I enjoyed him. I'm not like rooting against everybody involved here, but he was also in a school meeting basically, and so it's not like he's sitting there on Twitter like we're gonna best the Big 12 and do this and do all that. But there have been comments out there about they were going to be basically on par, if not better. That was said many months ago, and this certainly wouldn't point to that. And if anything, I've kind of wondered of like, what's the big deal that people are making about a potential difference of like $3 or $4 million? Well, then if you're talking about totals being a difference of $14 million, and not another, like you said, that would kind of vary or whatever, but I don't know. That seems actually like kind of significant. Like maybe not enough to change everything as crazy as that's been predicted. It could possibly change, but that seems like that's more. I can be far more open-minded about change when you're talking about $14 million every single year difference versus what's kind of been discussed previously when we're bickering over could $2.5 million extra cause somebody to want to move and shake up the entire landscape. But yeah, that's interesting. So glad that everybody involved was like trying to clarify. Glad Thamel also provided some clarity on those comments from Schultz. And so like we said at the beginning of the show, basically not a single thing has changed. There still has not been a TV deal shown, still not been I guess the thing that has changed is there was a grant of rights agreed to earlier this week. But beyond that, it's pretty much, I think, pretty much where it's been for a while now, although there was, I guess, some expectation that there would be something quite different announced by the Pac-12 today. Not that it would be more going in reverse again. It was more of an idea, I think, by some that there would be like something to potentially announce today or something along those lines, and that's not going to be the case because, it would have happened by now. Yeah. I don't think they're going to announce it at 4 p.m., West Coast time heading into the weekend. After all the hell you've taken, you bet if it's a deal that's worth bragging about, 8 a.m. Monday morning, boom, all over the socials, all over TV, all over everything if I was the Pac-12 people in charge. But, yeah, nothing to expect, I would think, late afternoon, Friday heading into the weekend. So we continue on with patience. Yep. I have another note, though, that's interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Has nothing to do with what we've been talking about, but Joey McGuire did name Tyler Shuck their starting quarterback today. I don't know if you guys saw that, but from Don Williams a little while ago, here in the last hour, actually, Joey McGuire apparently made the call, and it will be Tyler Shuck, former Oregon Duck. Obviously was the starter last year as well, but that was for the games he was healthy for, which was a little bit at the beginning and then a little bit more towards the end. And by the end, he was back to being, fully in the saddle. But he was competing with Baron Morton, and Donovan Smith had left to go be the starter at Houston. And so Tyler Shuck, the super veteran at this point, beats out Baron Morton, but I'm sure we'll see plenty of Morton as well at some point or another. But I think that's exciting. I think Tyler Shuck, man, they put a lot on him. There's a lot of, I think, potential there. I think there's a lot of optimism with him. I think there's questions about what their record might look like if he was the quarterback all year long last year and they won 8 games despite all that. He was what was his, gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head. But wasn't he 5-0 as a starter, I think? Was it something along those lines? So, yeah, there's already a lot of reasons why, people are kind of banging the Texas Tech drum. I do think, it's understandable if you're a little bit less optimistic. Not that they're not going to be good, but you're not all in. I'm they're winning 10 games this year. But I think if you want to be in that frame of mind, I think there's enough reasons to say, we could win 10 games this year. I think there's enough in place that you feel like if things break your way, you could win the Big 12 this year, at least be in that Big 12 championship game. But now you know who your starting quarterback's going to be. So just one more domino has fallen as we start heading towards the season here.
Yeah, I think that with Baron Morton, the future's bright after Tyler Shuck. I think it's good he gets another year. Tyler Shuck came back in after being healthy against Baylor, and you want to talk about
that Baylor game. That was
rusty off the shelf. He just.
Was that his first pass he threw a pick or his second pass he threw that pick six?
Yeah, he needed more time to warm up for sure.
I can't remember.
It was really bad. And then I thought I was just concerned as a football enthusiast, oh man, this kid might have lost. He might have been too banged up and may not get healthy again. And then all really it was I think at that night, Tyler Shuck wasn't expected to play in that
Absolutely
situation
not.
at all. And
I'll tell you, Paul, I don't think that anybody involved thought that game was going to go that way.
Yeah, exactly. So
I don't think anybody in Lubbock, Texas thought that was going to be how that game went. That was a shock. None of us thought that that's how that game would go. We were kind of worried. I know I was, at least. I don't speak for everybody else, but I know I was like, man, Baylor wasn't playing well at all.
Yeah.
They kind of had been showing who they were going to be, actually, and all of a sudden, like, that was their best night of the entire year. They're just like, you know what? There's some motivation playing our old coaches and, I guess just, the food chain, trying to maintain our spot on this as best we can in state and all that, and that was a good performance, man. But, that was that the best performance they had all year? Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably. Yeah.
I think
it's definitely up there.
Yeah, because it was on the road
At night.
At night in a place that you don't want to play.
Patrick Mahomes was there.
Yeah, it was Patrick Mahomes night. I mean, yeah, it was. That was.
But point being, Shuck came off the bench not expecting to play, and he got pick six like pretty quick, and then there was a little bit of a rally there at the end.
But like the next drive, I mean, he had like a really like silly decision where he lost yards where he didn't have to, and I thought like, oh man, this guy's in his dome. And then all it took was, he's got to just take practice reps. He's fine.
Yeah, he just needs to knock some rust off.
He's fine. He was really, really rusty. All right, when we come back, our good friend Jerry Hill of the Baylor Bear Insider. This is 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House. Samantha Duvall is in charge of marketing and also distribution. Memorial Day, right around the corner, 4th of July. What are some of the best opportunities for people if they want to order online and maybe get a bundle when they have those holidays in front of them?
TexasBeefHouse.com. You can order. We've got plenty of family bundles. Probably our most bestseller is our sampler pack. That gives you a variety of our jalapeno and cheese patties, our regular patties, ground beef, our garlic link summer sausage. Right now, all of our family bundles are on sale. It's the best time to buy it. You can buy steaks individually. All of our steaks come 2 to a package. We ship Monday through Wednesday. So make sure you get your orders in early. That way you can get them almost the next day.
The owner, Aaron Duvall, his daughter-in-law, Samantha Duvall, head of marketing and distribution, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com. At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? by not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference, and that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
It's Jeep season at Allen Samuels in Waco, and the deals are hot. Get a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with $5,500 in total values, or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with total values up to $6,000.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Old friend Jerry Hill, Baylor Bear insider, with us on the show today. Still in my top 15 co-hosts of all time.
I'm down to top 15.
Maybe top 10. Sorry, top 10.
Okay,
top 10.
Thank you.
Top
Thank
10.
you.
Top 10. You know,
well, at the time you first said it, I know I think you maybe only had 10, but
yeah,
I want to still be in your top 10.
Absolutely, Jerry. So we're in the summer. I know you are down in Austin covering track today because that's still going on. But we'll start with football and then we'll get to basketball. But a couple weeks ago, Dave Aranda announced. Charlie Brewer is this. Charlie Brewer, dear God.
Charlie Brewer. There we
go. I've been on our message. I've been on our message board.
Time machine thing.
I've been on our message board too much, Jerry. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, that's all right.
Yeah, Blake Shapen is the starter. He really needs to change that damn number. I'm just telling you.
Well, and he does look a little bit like him. So you're not the first to do that one.
No, and I won't be the last. I know, but Blake Shapen is the starter. How do you see that playing out overall as it relates to Sawyer Robertson and his development?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, Sawyer had just gotten here and was learning a new system and all of that, and he's a guy that really hadn't played a lot in 2 years. So I think it's a deal where he probably needs a little bit more time, even just learning the system, because he's been in a completely different offensive system, more of the Mike Leach offensive system. And even in high school, he kind of ran the same thing. So he was learning that this spring. But I know he's a guy they're excited about. And I don't think this was why the decision was made. But in my mind anyway, if you had named Sawyer right now, Blake Shapen probably would have been in the portal and gone. Whereas I think, with Blake being named, I don't think Sawyer was going anywhere. Sawyer, like I said, had just gotten here, and I think he wants to give it a shot here and feels like this is the place for him. So, I'm trying to remember, honestly, the last time, and maybe it was Charlie during the short season, but I don't remember very many times lately where Baylor has gotten through a season with one quarterback. So, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I think there will be times, obviously, for Sawyer, and he's going to develop. And, I guess in a sense, guys, I think Blake was named the starter for the first game. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's written in stone that he's your starter the whole year. I think ideally he would be, and you develop Sawyer, and then either Blake moves on or Sawyer, or they compete for the job again next spring. But I think Sawyer will get some chances during the season, and then again, how many times have we seen a Baylor quarterback standing all through the season? So you have to have at least two guys, and I think it's a good situation to have right now. But I definitely think Sawyer will get chances down the road.
Yeah, Jerry, I think everybody kind of depends on who was probably trying to look to be negative or looking to be over. Right. But either way, yeah, it's like he was named the starter for the first game. And then if he doesn't play well, guess what? They can change quarterbacks. Yep. You're absolutely dead on with that. Heard a lot of good things about R.J. Martinez, not in terms of like going and grabbing the starting job, but just how impactful was he in bringing a lot of experience to that room, being an older guy and just kind of helping the cohesion there and having a firm option there at the third spot if things come to that.
Yeah, and again, I think you need that kind of depth, at Craig, and they haven't had that. So I think to have three guys that, you trust, because I know the coaches did like him, and he's a little shorter guy, but very effective. He throws. Sometimes he does a little bit of the, almost shortstop type throws, which Blake has a little bit of that too. But no, I think he gives you a guy that's, been in that situation. Maybe not at the level of the Big 12, but he's got a lot of college experience. So I think he does help the room. And he's a guy that just maybe kind of wanted a chance on a higher level and thought he, could come in here and certainly did. He competed in the spring, and they love having him here. So it's a good room right now. And with the volatility of the transfer portal and all that stuff that's going on, it's hard to have that kind of depth and stability in the quarterback room. So, and it may only be for a year, but, it's good that they have that kind of, depth and even really experience. When you talk about Blake, has had a full year as a starter under his belt, had played obviously some the year before, and now you're bringing in a guy in RJ that has a lot of college experience, a lot of starts under his belt. And then Sawyer's been in a different system, but he's been in college for 2 years. So you really have a lot of experience at that position.
Jerry, a few things hit Baylor simultaneously last year that made them far below the team that they were just the year before when they had the greatest season in school history, in that they didn't have the players on the outside who would consistently make plays and stay healthy. And then the defense, which everybody thought was going to at least stay somewhat around status quo, could not overcome losing a guy like Jalen Petrie alone, not to mention the other guys that they lost. What makes you feel better about the direction of those two particular things this year?
Well, I think Keytron Jackson helps you at the outside position, and then just the development of some of those younger guys, the sophomores in that class, Hal Presley, Monterey Baldwin, all those guys. I think you have a lot more depth and competition at those spots. This past year, you didn't even really have competition at the spots, and just nobody really stepped up to be the guy. So, I think that'll help a lot. Even bringing in some of the guys that they did with this last class, I think they'll be in a lot better shape at the wide receiver position. I know they're really counting on Keytron, the Arkansas transfer, to kind of step into those shoes. And just from what I saw in spring and stuff, he's a guy that can go deep and go get it. So, again, like you said, that was something they missed last year with Taekwon gone and all the other guys gone for that matter. So I think that's a huge help on that side. And then on the defensive side, you added some transfers that really kind of help you at each level. So I think that helps. Mike White, the Liberty transfer, he really stepped in there, and I think he's going to be a guy that's going to make a difference at linebacker. And then they had the transfer from Miami, Isaiah Dunn, at cornerback. So, I think that helps. And then you've just got another year for some of those younger guys that, maybe didn't come through like you hoped last time, but they're going to be in better shape to do that this year. I think that's still kind of the question mark, particularly in the secondary, because you don't really have certainly the proven guys there that you did maybe a couple of years ago. So that to me is the biggest question going in to the fall is, do they have the depth that they need there? And even the starters, do they have the guys in place for that secondary?
Jerry, Matthew Pallage, we got a little bit of a glimpse into him in our little media windows. You get a bit more time out there, and I guess I could see it a little bit just in terms of seeing a guy going through warm-up lines and yelling and coaching a little bit here and there. But was it noticeable, a little bit of an uptick in that energy, just kind of overall with the team throughout spring for the parts that you were able to – I mean, obviously you got to see pretty much all of it, but was that as notable as maybe it was talked about in media sessions?
Yeah, and I think, in talking to the players too, you heard it from them. You heard about the energy and certainly from Matt Pallage, but even other guys, even other guys in the coaching staff. But yeah, no, I think you could definitely see it. And I think, in my mind, Craig, I think they're going to be a lot more aggressive maybe. I think Ron's defense was maybe a little more passive. I think Matt Pallage is going to go after people. So I think that's a change that you'll see a little bit with his defense. And like you said, just the energy that he brings, I think the players feed off of that. They see that, they feel that from him, and again, some of the other coaches. So I think all of that will pay into that defense being better this year.
Jerry, did you? I mean, you were around the team a little bit more, obviously working inside and covering them. Did you sense the tension and things that Dave Aranda has talked about after the season was over? About just there wasn't a cohesiveness
during the
season, yeah, but especially kind of getting into details on it afterwards.
I didn't see it like during the season, Paul, because I'm not with them like 24/7 or anything. I'm mainly with them some at practice and at games, and I didn't really see that to an extent, but I can see where it would have happened and could have happened, that maybe guys took advantage of, him being, kind of letting things go, I guess. I think it was a little bit of a check for him too, like, hey, I need to be better at this, which is good. I mean, we forget this was his, third year as a head coach, so he's still relatively new to the position, and I really kind of write off 20. So really, this was his second full year as a head coach, and so I think he is still learning. But I think what you see with Dave Aranda is he does recognize things at least and makes the changes. I don't think it was probably an easy thing for him to get rid of Ron. That was a guy that he had worked for how many ever years ago. So I think Dave has shown, even going back to making the changes after the first year on the offensive side, he's a guy that's not afraid to make change. And I think when he saw some things that weren't good with what he did, with how he did it, he was more than willing. He's ready to make that change. So again, I think that's a good sign for a young head coach, is that he notices even, limitations on himself and knowing that he has to get better at that. And I think he will.
Jerry, the men's basketball team has added some guys here in the offseason. Nunn, Dennis, tried to get down the road, and a couple of guys didn't happen. Yeah. Still waiting to hear on Jalen Bridges. What do you think of the trajectory of the roster from the start of the offseason to now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, adding Ray J, you can call me Ray, you can call me Ray J, you can call me Mr. Dennis. I think adding him, and then, like you said, adding Jaden Nunn, I mean, those were big pickups because those were positions where they needed the help. When you think about LJ leaving, Adam Flagler, and what I'm hearing, guys, maybe y'all are hearing the same thing, I think he's going to be a second-round draft pick. I wasn't sure, coming off of the season, but apparently his workouts were so good that they're projecting him to go second round and maybe even fairly high in the second round. So you lose those two guys, and you really needed, and Keontae, obviously, top 10 pick. So you needed to replenish that room a little bit. I think they have with those two guys. And then what you had, coming in with the freshmen that are just both incredible players. So Jacoby Walter and Milo. So I think adding all of that was really good. I think if you get, as long as you get Jalen back, and I'm hearing more and more that's what's going to happen. And maybe that was some of what happened with, the guys that they were looking at, is maybe they couldn't promise those guys that Jalen wasn't going to come back, and maybe that swayed their decision. I don't know on that, but I just think if you get Jalen back with everybody else in that room, and then the guys that you've added, I think that's a good looking roster for next year. I got to think that they have added good pieces, and again, a lot of it will come down to chemistry and putting those guys together and all that. But I think Scott and his guys are the ones to do that, and that'll be interesting to see. And of course, they've got a foreign trip this summer that will help too. That they'll get that time with them. I believe they're going to maybe Italy and Greece. I was not asked to go on that trip. Sorry. But yeah, I think that will help them, much like, when Keontae was able to get that time in Canada this past, when they played in that tournament last summer.
Yeah, Jerry, that's unfortunate. You would figure that would be really good content for what you do.
I think it would be great content. And actually Italy is one of those places where my wife and I really want to go, but Paul, I'm still waiting on the invitation, and it has not come yet. So I'm just moving on. I'm making other plans. I'm in the transfer portal waiting to go for another trip, maybe a cruise or something.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're not talking about going to Hawaii with me next week, right?
Oh, yeah. You and I are going to be there together, right?
Yeah.
Hey, congrats congrats, man. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I appreciate that. You've been married for a little bit.
Yeah.
There are a couple times. So you know what not to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I did learn some things from him the first time.
Yeah.
Paul, just and I'm being serious with you now. I mean, just make it a partnership and do your part. I guess is part of it. Is I think the first time through, as much as I wanted to say that I was, kind of carrying my end, I don't think I did. I tried to be a great father. I don't think I was always a great husband. And so I think that was some lessons that I learned the first time is you've got it is a partnership, and she shouldn't have to do everything. So that was a big lesson that I had to learn. We're 16 years in now, and I think we're both really happy. So that would be my, and I'm sure you probably know that and probably heard it from other people, but that's a big key is make her your partner and you carry your load. Don't make her carry everything. I know you're a strong guy and you can carry it, but let her carry some, but you need to carry your part of the load too.
Jerry, I appreciate that. Look, you can never hear a good advice too much. You can never do it. This is why you're top 9.
Oh, top 9. Yeah.
Top 9 co-hosts of all time for
oh
sure.
My God.
Top 9. The rankings change week to week, like college football. Depends on who wins games. That's all. How they perform.
I just don't want to get out of the top 10.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm happy with 9. I'm happy with 10. Just keep me in that top 10, and I'll be happy.
Yeah. That's great. Well, Jerry, have fun down in Austin. I'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
It's Jerry Hill of the Baylor Bear Insider. That was fantastic advice. I've gotten a lot of good advice through the time. I try and avoid asking people who are still mad about being divorced, because usually their advice is pretty bad, because they're mad about it still.
Probably part of the reason why they're in that position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get it unsolicited.
Sure.
And so, but it happens. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
I hope so.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit here and gush about it. Nobody cares about that. But yeah, I'm excited. I just wanted to ask him and see what he had. And maybe if he had a funny thing to say, but it was good. It was really good stuff. When we come back, the final wedding related top 5 of the week. Top 5 best current college football marriages. This is 365 Sports.
It's Jeep season at Allen Samuels in Waco, and they have options for you. Shop the greatest selection in Central Texas, including a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with $5,500 in total values, or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with total values of up to $6,000. Get a 2023 Jeep Compass, 10% off MSRP. Ram truck, we know what that means, and we know that Allen Samuels loaded up with Ram trucks, offering 10% off MSRP on a new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, or get 2.9% financing for 72 months. The choice is yours. And it's Dodge season. Right now, a 2023 Dodge Challenger or Dodge Charger SXT, GT, or RT with total values of up to $2,000. And if you're a first responder, always an additional $500 off. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340, and Ted Teague, the general manager, a tremendous staff to help you with your vehicle interest and buy at Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wazzu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 best current marriages in college football. I started doing this list, and then, if you go back to a bygone era, it would have been really hard to do things like Bobby Bowden and Tom Osborne and all that, because there's a ton of guys who were at places it was their program for a long time, and that's just not the case anymore. And I don't know how you, especially when you look at, again, the what is now a bygone era of college athletics, really, how you, I don't know, how you compare it fairly, So I said, I'm just going to scrap it. And I'll do the current ones. So number 5, Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. Look, it's not always, this is maybe the most realistic to any relationship that's long-term ever.
And these are good marriages, to be
it's
clear?
Good, I'm telling you. Look, here's why. And this is why I picked Mike Gundy, and hear my, explanation on this. It's not always peaches and cream. And right now, I would say that the last year or so has not been peaches and cream for Oklahoma State. But they're together. They're in it together. they and Mike Gundy have committed to each other long term, and they're going to work it out. And I'm of the belief that Mike Gundy will have Oklahoma State winning again pretty consistently on the other side of getting out of all this. Now, the one thing I do wonder about Mike Gundy and this particular marriage is just him as a person. When does he get tired of the way that college athletics is now and say, well, I'm retired because I've got more money than I'll ever need and I don't want to do this? But this one has stood the test of time so far, even though it gets rocky in spots.
Yeah,
you can disagree. Feel free, yeah.
Because you're right. It's made it through some really rough patches. It's lasted a while. It's gone on far longer than most other marriages in college football. The problem I have, Paul, and the reason why I basically disagree is that he's tried to cheat and leave like multiple times now.
Okay,
and
I did
the other
not account
side
for that.
has not followed through with their side of it, but he's sniffed around like multiple times and just never latched on with any other program, wife, whatever. So that's where I slightly, because he's tried to leave the marriage. Like he's tried to leave it, and that's been more than once. And so, you look on the surface though, it's it is like marriages. You look on the surface like, hey, looks fine. They're winning games most of the time, and okay, you hit a little rough patch, that's part of it. But you look a little further into his text messages on his phone, and there's a lot of ADs in there, Yeah. So that's why I pause when you say that. But, I mean, it's worked out for a long time. And
that's a good point. Now, I will say this, but he has not been able to do that. So Mike Gundy is the guy who's tried to, but just can't close the deal.
Yeah, so he gets credit for not actually cheating, even though he's tried to cheat, basically.
Yeah, he's in a very nebulous.
Let's not award anything for that.
He's in this nebulous area.
Yeah, he's in an area where – it could have gone real bad, but it's stayed together for better or worse. I mean, maybe you look at it as though he could have and he didn't, but I don't know. I think if one of those others had said yes at some point in time, then you may have seen this marriage end long ago. But it's been a long time. I mean, I never would have thought when I saw spiky hair, brash Mike Gundy back in the day that, all these years later he would still be sitting around Stillwater, winning games and playing for a title just a couple of years back, nearly getting in the playoff. Like, we almost forget that now at this stage, don't we? That they were nearly in the playoff 2 years ago, if not for that loss to Baylor. So, yeah.
Yeah, Wet Blanket, big Oklahoma State fan, said it is a great marriage. He loves us, and we love him. Okay,
great.
All right, there we go. Number 4, Kyle Whittingham. People may not realize, Urban Meyer was the coach at Utah. He left, and they have not changed since then. Kyle Whittingham took over, has done a great job. This is the perfect personality for university. He's, at this point, grizzled as hell as a head coach, winning back-to-back conference titles, working out. Now, the only problem Utah has is when he decides to retire, because really everything's worked out for him. He's found a great niche for them. And again, the conference around might be problematic overall, but I mean, they're the class of the Pac-12 the last 2 years. So
it's amazing. When he retires, they join the Big 12. They hire Kingsbury. They're going air raid. He's been a guy who's had an incredible amount of longevity, to be sure. I mean, it's amazing. I was like in high school when he was, when he was first starting out, and that's. I don't know, nobody even knows me basically, but for me that feels like a really long time ago. And so to think that one guy in college sports, especially in football, with as much turnover as there is, has lasted that amount of time is pretty incredible. And he's won a lot of big games, obviously won some Pac-12 titles here of late. It is weird, though, to see them kind of celebrate the Rose Bowl burst when they haven't won that. It's celebrate. Like, I guess that's part of progress and making steps. I'm not knocking it entirely, but almost like certain members of the, how everybody's got their certain ones that are not, don't paint us all with that same brush, but there are certain members of the Utah fan base that paint that, and you would think that they won those Rose Bowls when in fact they did not. But it was a big deal to get there, and they've had great years. I mean, they've won a bunch of games with him and had a lot of big moments. So, yeah, I think I got all the respect for Kyle Whittingham. And, look, I don't know everybody else's situations, in terms of flirtations and rumors and all that. Like, I know a Mike Gundy, for example, having, been in the Big 12 this entire time. But he seems like he's as much of a Utah guy as there possibly could be, and he's been incredible there.
Yep. Number 3. Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. Look, they don't win all that often, but when they do have a good season, it's due in large part to what he's done there. So they have academic hurdles that are difficult to overcome, and that you got to be a damn good student to be at Northwestern. And they're going to recruit a certain type of athlete, like Stanford is, like a lot of some of those schools are. But he's an alum. He gets it. He stood the test of time. There appears to be no groundswell for getting rid of him. So, this is one that's worked in spite of a lot of really blah seasons, but they've had some really good ones under him too. And I think Northwestern, as an athletic department, understands that you're probably going to have ebbs and flows of getting those right kind of guys who are elite enough to, win at the Big Ten level, and then also, stay competitive academically in your school, and they don't mess with their coaches all that much.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of go through a couple years cycle where there's a couple years where they're like not even a bowl team, and then they'll pop up and win, 8 games, even like 9 games a few years back, and then they'll go back and they'll win like 4, 5. Last year, 1, and they've won a total of 4 in the last 2 years. I think even for their standards, that's a little bit not great.
He probably needs that to come around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about that situation. Like if that to even mention, I'm not mentioning a hot seat, but like I don't even know at what point with that situation, with the mentality of like that fan base and that school, of like what would it take to then actually say like, you know what, there's like we might need to like look at something here. I don't even know if that's even feasible, or if it's like Kirk Ferentz at Iowa where it's like that's never going to happen until he decides. I don't know that, but I do feel like without that knowledge, just looking from an outsider perspective, yes, you ebb and flow, and there are some times where, hey, you don't make a bowl game for a couple years, but inevitably over the course of his career, they've bounced back after 2 years or so. They need to bounce back, I feel like, after the last couple of years with the low win totals. And, now it's a whole brave new world, right, with the LA schools. I don't know exactly how that changes expectations at all or not. But, yeah, he's been there for a really long time, done a great job overall with the program, also has had his fair share of big moments as well, and it seems like people love him. So, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But, yeah, in that regard, all seems well. He just would like to have maybe a little bit more winning here pretty soon because it hasn't been great the last couple years.
No, absolutely not. Number 2, Kirby Smart at Georgia. And yes, Paxton, I did accidentally leave Dabo Swinney off this list, but maybe it's for spite. But yeah, that's a really good one. But Kirby Smart at Georgia. This one fairly new, but it was a really good decision. It's working out for everybody. You can't say anything what's other than some off the field stuff that's not good at Georgia right now. But look, they are rolling. And this is the class of college football. Georgia, the back-to-back national champions. Kirby has convinced Georgia to give him twice the recruiting budget that even Alabama has, where he came from. And, he's an alum back at his alma mater doing what they couldn't do for 40 years. Yeah, this is near perfect.
Yeah, it's been pretty dadgum good. And I do want to go back to Pat Fitzgerald because I said that every couple years thing. They had that run from 15 to 18 that was pretty dadgum spectacular. And I'm sure he's probably got a lot of leeway as a result of that. And earlier in his tenure, he had a great run too. So this lately has been more of a downtrend and outside of the standard than what typically has been. And man, more that I look at it, like, he's done a hell of a job in Northwestern. Like even more, I knew he did, but even more so. I thought there was some more dips than there were, but that's mostly been recently. So yeah, I mean that's a great marriage, and they won the division a couple of times. So I'm sure the last couple of years are like water off a duck's back, and he'd have to drop a lot further. But it will be interesting in this new era of sort of what the expectations are. But yeah, Kirby Smart. I mean, like everything he's done, he's amazing. I don't know where you would point to if you were looking at cracks in the foundation. It seems all pretty strong. Seems like the relationship's going well, and I don't know really much what else you could ask for, quite frankly, if you're the other side of this Georgia marriage than what he's done already.
Yeah, absolutely. And number 1, Nick Saban. Look, it was absolutely perfect when it happened. It was great timing on his part for look, he was at the Dolphins. They didn't sign Drew Brees. He and his wife decided they wanted to get back in college anyway. The Alabama job was open. Boom. And history has been made, and he's become the greatest college football coach of all time in that period. And look, you would think that Bama and almost anybody who can walk and chew gum would be great, but they've had 3 great coaches in their history: Bear Bryant, Gene Stallings, and Nick Saban. And Nick Saban is better even than the Bear in an era where he has advantages now that Bear Bryant didn't have, but also for the first part of it, he had a big disadvantage compared to what Bear Bryant could do. There was no scholarship limit, when Bear Bryant was the coach, and he has 85 scholarships, more teams just flooding at and getting after him. No one's been more consistent. No one's been greater in the history of college football. No one has more national titles. And Nick Saban it was a perfect marriage, which is why he was never going to Texas. I'm just throwing that in for the
I heard he was looking for houses. That's what I remember
that was
reading.
Message board lies.
I remember that.
What that was.
Pat, right? And then his wife's name, Pat, I think.
Yep.
Pat was rolling around Austin from
Lake
what I
Travis.
remember. Yep, that's what I remember.
Loves Lake
back in the
Travis.
day.
It's the place she's always wanted to be. Look,
I typically give what I think are sometimes on occasion, maybe like twice a year, I give away what I feel is like a pretty good idea, and sometimes that idea may already exist. Winsipedia is a great tool for like comparing schools, right? Football wise, is there a version on that website for coaches? Because here's a free idea, because I'm certainly not going to just go put the work in and I don't know how to even begin doing that, but it would be cool to be able to pull up like Nick Saban versus Bear Bryant and then have it listed where it's like national titles, conference titles, all-time wins, just like we can do with Alabama and Georgia, and we can see their head-to-head all-time and all of that. That would be a cool little addition, or an addition somewhere else in my mind. I don't know what you guys think, but that'd be cool. Because you can just pull up Urban versus Saban and all right, he's got 7 of this and he's got 6 of that, and it would maybe even be more interesting than the team some of the times.
Yeah. No, and look, Urban Meyer could very well have been on this list if he was
faithful in his marriage.
Yeah, exactly. If he was like Nick Saban was, where it's not, and I know it's a little bit about Nick Saban, but it's not really about Nick Saban.
Right.
It's kind of about Urban Meyer, where he is. Urban and Deion are similar in that regard.
Yeah, maybe faithful's not the right. I don't know what you would describe it. I'm trying to use the wedding theme here, and he's obviously gone out of bounds on a few occasions. So however you would want to categorize that. I was just throwing that as a loose way to say wrongdoing that would cause the relationship to crumble. But whatever it is that he does, where he finds himself where he does.
Yeah, because I think when it comes to organization and football coaching skill and all those things,
he's one of the best.
Urban Meyer is one of the best. Where he and Nick Saban differ is that Nick doesn't get lost in the weeds of some of the stuff that Urban did. But look, Urban's won 3 national titles and he was really good. But Nick, it's just the best. I mean, I know people don't like him because he wins all the time, but for Christ's sake, he's just so good.
Yeah, he is, and that's what makes me think of that Winsipedia ideas of being able to do a coaches, because there is that Saban versus Bear, and let's pull it up and see, side by side, all the categories ranked for who has the most of everything or the best of everything, and that'd be cool to be able to just pop up just like that, or Urban versus Sark, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, he's arguably the GOAT. Some people aren't ready to put him there yet, but when all is said and done, hard to imagine he's not going to win a little bit more before he goes. And I don't know who he won't possibly jump by the time it's all said and done. But
yeah, I mean, maybe overall wins he's not going to catch Paterno or whatever. Maybe he doesn't, but we'll see how that goes. But he's got more of those trophies and rings than anybody else. Thank you, retired stockbroker, for the $10 super chat. I'm not going to split it my time. I'm going to drink it on my own, and I'll say, hey, one of my viewers did this. But thank you, retired stockbroker. Thank you to everybody who's congratulated me. The next time you see me, I'll have a ring on this finger, and I'll be a married man. So I'm very excited about that. Can't wait to see you guys again. Well, I can. I'm going to be gone in Hawaii for 2 weeks. I'm not even going to think about you that much. But thank you for everybody who watches the show. Thanks to Craig. Thanks to everybody who's a part of the show, Jerry and Grayson and Scott today. Thanks to everybody who's helped out. I'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody. Smokey's back on Monday.